Some losses cut so deep they reshape your entire world, leaving you to carry burdens that were meant for two. Every sunrise becomes a choice between surrender and stubborn hope, between letting go of everything you once held sacred or fighting another day for what remains. Catherine Bell knows this weight well. This young widow has spent 2 years fighting to save her late husband's wheat farm while raising 2 children alone. The land is all she has left of the love she lost. Then one morning, a giant stranger appears at her door with worn boots and weathered hands. He asks for nothing but the chance to work no wages, no promises, just labor for a roof and simple meals. He says only 5 words that will change everything. What Catherine doesn't know is that this quiet man carries secrets as deep as her own grief, and sometimes the greatest love comes not from grand gestures, but from someone who simply shows up every day. Can a woman who has learned to trust only herself open her heart to a man who speaks through actions rather than words? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The first light of dawn painted the Wyoming sky in shades of copper and gold, but Catherine Bell had been awake for an hour already. Sleep came in fragments these days, broken by the endless list of tasks that awaited her with each sunrise. She stood at the kitchen window of the small farmhouse, her fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug that had once belonged to her grandmother. The coffee was weak. She'd been stretching the grounds for 3 days now, but it was warm, and warmth had become a luxury she rationed carefully. Outside, the wheat field stretched toward the horizon like a golden sea, but Catherine's trained eye could see what others might miss. The stalks were thinner this year, the heads not as full. 2 years of struggling alone had taught her to read the land's moods, to understand its whispers of drought and promise. The farm that had once thrived under Thomas's careful hands now bore the marks of her limitations, fences that needed mending equipment, that required repairs she couldn't afford, and soil that yearned for attention she couldn't give, while juggling the needs of 2 young children. The floorboards creaked behind her, and she turned to see 8-year-old Samuel padding into the kitchen, his dark hair tousled from sleep. He had his father's eyes deep brown and serious beyond his years, and sometimes, when he looked at her with that particular expression of concern, Catherine felt her heart clench with both love and grief. "Morning, Mama," Samuel said, settling onto one of the wooden chairs at the small table. "You're up early again." "Lots to do today, sweetheart," Catherine replied, though they both knew she was up early every day. She poured him a glass of milk from the pitcher, grateful that their cow Bessie remained one of their most reliable sources of income. "Where's your sister?" "Still sleeping." She was talking in her sleep again, something about Papa and horses. Catherine nodded, her throat tightening. Mary had been only 4 when Thomas died, and her memories of her father had taken on an almost mythical quality. In her dreams, Papa was always there, always strong, always ready to lift her onto his shoulders and carry her around the farm while she giggled and pretended to help with the chores. The truth was harsher than a 6-year-old's dreams. Thomas Bell had been thrown from a spooked horse while checking the fence line during a sudden thunderstorm 2 summers ago. By the time Catherine found him, the rain had washed away his last words, and she'd been left to face the enormous responsibility of keeping his legacy alive while raising their children alone. She moved to the wood-burning stove and began preparing breakfast, Johnny cakes and bacon from the pig they'd slaughtered in the fall. The supplies were running low, but there would be enough for today. There always had to be enough for today. "Mama," Samuel said carefully, the way he did when he'd been thinking about something serious. "Mr. Larson came by yesterday while you were in the field. He said—" "I know what Henrik said," Catherine interrupted gently. Henrik Larson owned the neighboring farm, and his offers of help had become increasingly personal over the past months. He was a good man, a widower himself with grown children, but Catherine wasn't ready for the kind of help he wanted to provide. "What did you tell him?" "That you were busy and couldn't talk." Samuel picked at his food. "He said he'd wait, but then he left when you didn't come back." Catherine sat across from her son, studying his face. Samuel had inherited more than his father's eyes. She'd also gotten Thomas's ability to see straight to the heart of things. "Are you worried about something, Sam?" The boy was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Mrs. Patterson at the Mercantile said her husband thinks we should sell the farm. She said it's too much for a woman alone." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Are we going to lose Papa's farm, Mama?" The question hit Catherine like a physical blow, but she kept her expression steady. Children needed certainty, even when the adults in their lives felt anything but certain. "No, sweetheart. This is our home and we're going to keep it. Your papa worked too hard building this place for us to give up now." But even as she spoke the words, Catherine felt the weight of the leather-bound journal that sat on the shelf above the kitchen window. Thomas's farming journal filled with his careful handwriting documenting weather patterns, crop rotations, and dreams for the future. She'd read it so many times the pages were beginning to soften at the edges, searching for wisdom that might help her succeed where he had thrived. The journal contained more than agricultural knowledge. It held Thomas's hopes for their children, his plans for expanding the wheat fields, his calculations about when they might afford a second horse or a new plow. Reading his words was like having a conversation with him across the veil of death. But it also reminded her daily of how much she still didn't know about running a farm. Mary's voice drifted down from upstairs, calling for her mama in the sleepy way that meant she was awake, but not quite ready to leave the warmth of her bed. Catherine rose to go tend to her daughter, but Samuel caught her hand. "Mama, when Papa was alive, did you ever think about what would happen if he struggled with the words, then tried again? Did you make plans in case something happened?" Catherine sat back down, her heart aching for the adult concerns her 8-year-old son carried. "We talked about it once or twice," she said honestly. "Your papa wanted to make sure you and Mary would always have a home, but we thought we had more time to figure things out." That was the truth, though, not the whole truth. Thomas had mentioned the need for a will for proper legal arrangements, but there had always been something more pressing: a fence to mend seeds, to plant a harvest, to bring in. They'd been young and healthy and full of plans for the future. Death had seemed like a distant concern, something to worry about when they were old and gray. Now Catherine faced the consequences of that optimism every day. The farm was hers legally, but the debt Thomas had taken on to buy new equipment still lingered like a shadow over everything. Cornelius Wade, the banker in town, reminded her of that debt with increasing frequency, his visits becoming less cordial and more pointed as the months passed. Mama Mary's call was more insistent now, accompanied by the sound of bare feet on the wooden floor above. "Coming, sweetheart," Catherine called back, then looked at Samuel. "Finish your breakfast, then go feed the chickens. And Sam, we're going to be fine, I promise." She climbed the narrow stairs to the room her children shared, finding Mary sitting on the edge of her bed with her dark curls tangled around her face. At 6, Mary still had the soft roundness of early childhood, but her green eyes, Catherine's eyes, shelled a sharpness that spoke of a mind always working, always observing. "I had the dream again," Mary announced without preamble. "Papa was here and he was teaching me to braid the horses' manes. He said I was getting really good at it." Catherine sat beside her daughter and began working the tangles from her hair with gentle fingers. "That sounds like a nice dream." "It was, but then I woke up and remembered he's not really here." Mary's voice was matter-of-fact, but Catherine heard the underlying sadness. "Mama, why can't people stay forever?" It was the kind of question that had no good answer, at least not one that would satisfy a 6-year-old's need for the world to make sense. Catherine continued braiding Mary's hair, buying herself time to think. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I think Papa is still with us in different ways. Every time you help me in the garden, or when Sam fixes something the way Papa taught him, or when we take care of the animals Papa loved, he's still here." Mary considered this solemnly. "But it's not the same." "No," Catherine agreed. "It's not the same. But sometimes different can still be good." After getting Mary dressed and fed, Catherine sent both children outside to play while she tackled the morning chores. The routine was familiar by now. Milk Bessie, collect eggs from the henhouse, check on the pig, and then assess whatever had broken or needed attention since yesterday. Today's crisis was the water pump near the barn. It had been making strange noises for a week, and now it refused to produce more than a trickle. Catherine knelt beside it, her hands already dirty from examining the mechanism, trying to remember what Thomas had done the last time it malfunctioned. The sun was climbing higher, promising another scorching day, and sweat was already beading on her forehead. She'd managed to coax a bit more water from the pump by adjusting something that looked important, but she knew it was a temporary fix at best. They needed that water for the livestock, and if the pump failed completely— "Excuse me, ma'am," the voice came from behind her, deep and quiet. Catherine spun around, her heart racing from the surprise, and found herself looking up at a man she'd never seen before. He was taller than Thomas had been, with broad shoulders and hands that looked like they'd seen honest work. His clothes were travel-worn but clean, his dark hair touched with gray at the temples, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds. What struck her most was his stillness. He stood there with his hat in his hands, making no move toward her, no gesture that might seem threatening. Everything about his posture suggested patience, as if he was prepared to wait as long as necessary for her to speak first. "Can I help you?" Catherine asked, rising to her feet and wiping her hands on her apron. She was acutely aware of her disheveled appearance, of the dirt under her fingernails and the sweat staining her dress. "I'm looking for work, ma'am," the stranger said. His voice carried a faint accent. She couldn't place something that suggested education beneath the country cadence. "Saw your fields from the road, and it looks like you could use an extra pair of hands." Catherine felt her defenses rise immediately. She'd had this conversation before with drifters and seasonal workers, and it always ended the same way, with expectations she couldn't meet and complications she couldn't afford. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't pay wages right now." The man nodded as if he'd expected this response. "Wasn't asking for wages, ma'am. Just wondering if you might have some work in exchange for meals and a place to sleep." "Barn would be fine. I'm not particular about accommodations." This was new. Catherine studied his face, looking for signs of deception or ulterior motives, but found only a quiet sincerity that unsettled her. "What kind of work are you looking for?" "Whatever needs doing," he replied. "I've got experience with crops, livestock, repairs, most anything you'd find on a working farm." "And you don't want pay?" "No, ma'am. Just looking for a place to land for a while and honest work to do while I'm here." Catherine glanced toward the house, where she could see Samuel and Mary playing in the yard. They'd stopped their game to stare at the stranger, their curiosity evident even from a distance. The practical part of her mind was already cataloging all the tasks she couldn't handle alone: the pump repair, the fence line that needed mending, the barn roof that leaked when it rained. But the protective part of her mind, the part that had learned to be suspicious of offers that seemed too good to be true, whispered warnings. She didn't know, this man didn't know, where he'd come from or why he was really here. In a world where women alone were often seen as easy targets, trust had become a luxury she couldn't afford. "I don't even know your name," she said finally. "Elias Thorne, ma'am." He shifted slightly, and Catherine noticed the way he favored his left leg, as if an old injury still troubled him. "And I don't talk much, ma'am, but I can work hard." The simplicity of the statement, delivered without boast or embellishment, struck something deep in Catherine's chest. She thought of Thomas's journal, of all the plans and dreams written in his careful hand, of the mounting pile of tasks that seemed to grow larger every day, while her strength grew smaller. "I have 2 children," she said, testing him. "Yes, ma'am, I can see that. They come first, always, as they should, and I won't tolerate drinking or gambling, or you won't have trouble with any of that from me, ma'am." Catherine found herself studying his hands again, scarred but clean with the calluses that spoke of years of hard work. There was something about this man that felt different from the other drifters who'd stopped by over the months, a quality of stillness that seemed to run deeper than simple patience. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why would you work for just room and board? What's in it for you?" Elias Thorne was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes looking past her toward the wheat fields that stretched golden in the morning sun. When he spoke, his voice was even softer than before. "Sometimes a man just needs a place to belong for a while, ma'am, somewhere he can be useful." The words carried a weight that spoke of his own losses, his own journey through grief and displacement. Catherine recognized the tone she'd heard it in her own voice during the dark months after Thomas's death, when simple tasks felt overwhelming and the future seemed impossibly uncertain. "All right," she heard herself saying, "you can stay in the barn for now. We'll see how it works out." Something shifted in Elias Thorne's expression, not quite a smile, but a softening around his eyes that suggested relief. "Thank you, ma'am, you won't regret it." As Catherine watched him walk toward the barn, his stride steady despite the slight limp, she found herself touching the simple gold band on her left hand. Thomas's ring, which she'd continued wearing even after his death, felt warm against her skin in the morning sun. She didn't know if she'd made the right decision, but for the first time in months, she felt like she wasn't facing the day's challenges entirely alone. That had to count for something. True to his word, Elias Thorne appeared at Catherine's door before dawn the next morning. She found him standing quietly on the porch, hat in hand, waiting with the same patient stillness he'd shown the day before. The eastern sky was just beginning to blush with the promise of sunrise, and the air carried the cool bite that would soon give way to another scorching day. "Morning, ma'am," he said simply. "Where would you like me to start?" Catherine had spent half the night wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake, imagining all the ways this arrangement could go wrong. But looking at Elias, now respectful, ready to work, asking for direction, rather than assuming authority, some of her anxiety eased. "The water pump by the barn," she said. "It's been acting up, and I'm afraid it's going to fail completely." Elias nodded and followed her across the yard, his long stride easily matching her pace, despite his slight limp. The children were still sleeping, and the farm was wrapped in the peaceful quiet that came just before the day's work began. At the pump, Catherine explained what she'd observed, the strange noises, the decreasing water flow, her failed attempts at repair. Elias listened without interrupting, then knelt beside the mechanism and began examining it with methodical care. His hands moved over the pump with surprising familiarity, testing connections, listening to sounds, feeling for vibrations that might indicate the source of the problem. Catherine found herself studying those hands, long-fingered and gentle, despite their obvious strength, with scars that spoke of years of varied work. "Here's your trouble," Elias said after several minutes. He pointed to a connection she hadn't noticed, partially hidden by the pump housing. "This fitting's worked loose, and there's a crack in the housing itself, been losing pressure gradually. Can it be fixed?" "Yes, ma'am. Need to tighten this connection and patch the crack. Should have it working properly within the hour." Catherine watched in amazement as Elias produced tools from a worn leather satchel she hadn't noticed him carrying. The bag looked like it had seen considerable travel, its leather darkened with age and use. More surprising was the quality of the tools inside, well-maintained implements that spoke of a craftsman who took pride in his equipment. "You carry quite a collection," Catherine observed. "Man learns to be prepared when he's been on the road." Elias replied, selecting a wrench that fit the pump connection perfectly. "Never know what kind of work you'll find or what tools they'll have available." As he worked, Catherine found herself drawn into conversation despite her usual wariness around strangers. There was something about Elias's quiet competence that invited confidence. "How long have you been traveling?" she asked. "Couple of years now," he said, his attention focused on the repair. "Started in Kansas, worked my way west through Colorado, been looking for the right place to settle." "What made you leave Kansas?" Elias paused in his work, and Catherine saw something flicker across his expression, a shadow of old pain carefully contained. "Lost some folks I cared about, didn't seem like home anymore after that." The simple words carried a weight of grief that Catherine recognized immediately. She didn't press for details, understanding that some losses were too deep for casual conversation. "I'm sorry," she said instead. "Thank you, ma'am, time helps, but it doesn't heal everything." They worked in comfortable silence, after that Catherine holding tools and fetching water while Elias completed the repair. When he tested the pump, it responded with strong, steady flow, better than it had worked in months. "That should hold for years if you maintain it properly," Elias said, cleaning his tools with the same careful attention he'd given the repair. "I'll show you what to watch for so you can catch problems early." Catherine felt a flush of gratitude that caught her off guard. It had been so long since someone had simply solved a problem for her without expecting payment or creating complications in return. "Thank you," she said. "That would have cost me $20 in town if I could have afforded it." "Glad to help, ma'am." The sound of children's voices drifted from the house, and Catherine realized Samuel and Mary were awake and probably wondering where she was. "Would you like some breakfast?" she asked. "It's not much, but I'd be grateful for anything you can spare," Elias said. Catherine led him toward the house, noting how he moved with careful consideration, taking in details without seeming to stare. When they reached the kitchen, she found Samuel and Mary at the table, both eyeing the stranger with undisguised curiosity. "Children, this is Mr. Thorne," Catherine said. "He's going to be helping around the farm for a while." Samuel studied Elias with the serious expression he'd inherited from his father. "You're the man who was here yesterday." "That's right," Elias replied, settling carefully onto the chair Catherine indicated. "You must be Samuel. Your mother told me you're a good helper around here." The boy straightened with pride. "I can milk Bessie and collect eggs and stack firewood. Those are important jobs," Elias said seriously. "Takes a responsible man to handle livestock." Mary had been unusually quiet, but now she leaned forward with a directness that sometimes embarrassed Catherine. "Are you going to stay? Mama said you might not." "That's up to your mama," Elias replied, "but I'd like to stay and help if she'll have me." "Good," Mary declared. "Mama works too hard. She needs help," Mary Catherine warned gently. But Elias smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "Your daughter's got good eyes," he said. "She can see when someone's carrying too heavy a load." As Catherine prepared breakfast, she found herself observing the interaction between Elias and her children. He didn't talk down to them or try to win them over with false enthusiasm. Instead, he treated them with the same respectful attention he gave her, listening to their chatter about farm life and answering their questions with patience. When Samuel asked about the tools in his leather satchel, Elias explained their uses without condescension. When Mary wondered if he'd ever seen an eagle, he told her about spotting one near a creek in Colorado, describing it in detail that captured her imagination. "Did it talk to you?" Mary asked clearly, hoping for a magical story. "No, but it told me things anyway," Elias replied seriously. "The way it soared told me the wind patterns. The way it hunted told me where the fish were running. Sometimes you can learn a lot without words." Catherine found herself thinking about those words as she served the simple meal of Johnny cakes and bacon. There was something about Elias that suggested depths beneath his quiet surface, and education went beyond farming experiences that had taught him to read more than just weather patterns and soil conditions. After breakfast, Elias asked about the day's priorities. Catherine showed him the fence line that needed mending, the barn door that hung crooked, and the plow that required attention before the next planting season. She expected him to choose the easiest task first, but instead he headed for the most complex repair, the plow. "This is going to take most of the day," Catherine warned. "Maybe you should start with something simpler. Best to tackle the hardest job while I'm fresh," Elias replied, examining the plow's damaged mold board. "This equipment's the heart of your operation. Everything else can wait." Catherine left him to his work and returned to her own morning tasks, but found herself glancing toward the barn more often than necessary. Through the open doors, she could see Elias working with focused intensity, his movements economical and precise. Around mid-morning, Samuel approached her with an expression of barely contained excitement. "Mama, come see what Mr. Thorne's doing." Catherine followed her son to the barn, where she found Elias had not only repaired the plow but was in the process of improving it. He'd reinforced weak points in the frame and adjusted the mold board angle with modifications that spoke of genuine expertise. "Where did you learn to do this?" Catherine asked. "Picked it up over the years," Elias replied, but something in his tone suggested there was more to the story. "Worked on a lot of different farms, learned from men who knew their business." As the day progressed, Catherine's amazement grew. Elias moved through tasks with the efficiency of someone who understood not just how to do the work, but why it needed to be done in a particular sequence. He fixed the barn door, mended a section of fence, and even took time to show Samuel how to properly sharpen tools, all while maintaining the quiet, respectful demeanor that had marked their first meeting. The children gravitated toward him naturally. Mary brought him wildflowers she'd picked, which he accepted with grave courtesy and tucked into his shirt pocket. Samuel peppered him with questions about farming techniques, and Elias answered each one with patience and detail that suggested genuine interest in teaching. But it was the horses' reaction that truly caught Catherine's attention. Their two remaining horses, Thunder and Belle, had been skittish since Thomas's death, responding warily to anyone except Catherine and the children. Yet when Elias approached them, they showed none of their usual anxiety. Catherine watched from the kitchen window as Elias worked near the horses, his movements slow and non-threatening. Thunder, the more nervous of the two, actually moved closer to investigate this new person. When Elias offered his hand for the horse to sniff, Thunder responded by nudging his shoulder, a gesture of acceptance Catherine hadn't seen him make with any stranger. "He's got away with them," she murmured to herself, remembering how Thomas had always said horses were the best judges of character. As evening approached, Catherine found herself facing a dilemma she hadn't anticipated. The work Elias had accomplished in a single day would have taken her a week to complete, and that was assuming she'd had the knowledge and tools necessary to do it properly. The difference his presence made was undeniable. But accepting help had never been easy for Catherine, and accepting help from a man she barely knew felt like a dangerous precedent. She'd built her identity around independence, around proving that she could manage alone. Admitting she needed Elias felt like admitting defeat. The sound of a horse approaching interrupted her thoughts, and Catherine looked out to see Henrik Larsson riding into the yard. The neighboring farmer's face darkened when he spotted Elias near the barn, and Catherine felt her stomach tighten with anticipated complications. Catherine Henrik called dismounting with the heavy movements of a man unused to being questioned. "I came to check on you and the children." "We're fine, Henrik," Catherine replied, stepping onto the porch to meet him. "Thank you for asking." Henrik's gaze remained fixed on Elias, who had stopped his work but made no move to approach. "Who's the stranger?" "His name is Elias Thorne. He's helping with some repairs." For how long? Catherine felt a flash of irritation at Henrik's proprietary tone. "I haven't decided yet." "Catherine, you can't just take in drifters," Henrik said, lowering his voice, but not enough to prevent Elias from hearing. "You don't know anything about him. He could be dangerous. He's been nothing but respectful and helpful," Catherine replied firmly. "That's what they all seem at first." Henrik stepped closer, his bulk intended to be reassuring, but instead feeling oppressive. "You're a woman alone with 2 children. You need someone you can trust, someone with roots in the community." The implication was clear, and Catherine felt her temper rise. "I can make my own decisions about who I trust, Henrik." "Can you?" Henrik glanced again toward Elias, who had resumed his work with studied indifference to their conversation. "What do you really know about him, where he comes from, why he's here?" The questions echoed Catherine's own concerns, but hearing them from Henrik made her realize how much her perspective had already shifted. In one day, Elias had proven himself through actions rather than words, showing respect for her authority while providing the kind of practical help she desperately needed. "I know he's been a perfect gentleman," Catherine said. "I know he's worked harder today than most men would in a week, and I know it's my decision to make." Henrik's face flushed with frustrated anger. "Catherine, be reasonable. I've been trying to help you for months. You know me, you know my family, you know I care about you and the children. And I appreciate that, Henrik, but I'm not looking for that kind of help right now. What about when winter comes? What about when you can't keep up with the work? What happens to Samuel and Mary? If something happens to you, the questions hit their target, voicing fears Catherine carried but rarely acknowledged. She was one accident, one serious illness, one bad harvest away from losing everything. The security Henrik offered was real and practical, even if it came with expectations she wasn't ready to meet. "I'll figure it out," she said, though the words sounded less certain than she'd intended. Henrik started to respond, then caught sight of something over Catherine's shoulder. She turned to see Elias approaching, his leather satchel in hand and his expression carefully neutral. "Excuse me, ma'am," Elias said quietly. "I wanted to let you know I finished the repairs you asked for." Is there anything else you need done before dark? The question was addressed to Catherine, but his eyes took in Henrik's aggressive posture and her obvious discomfort. Everything about his demeanor suggested readiness not for violence, but for whatever response the situation might require. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne," Catherine said, grateful for the interruption. "I think that's enough for today." Elias nodded and started to turn away, but Henrik's voice stopped him. "Hold on there, stranger. I don't believe we've been introduced." Elias turned back slowly, his expression polite but guarded. "Elias Thorne. Henrik Larson. I own the farm to the east." Henrik's tone carried the weight of established authority. "How long are you planning to stay?" "That's up to Mrs. Bell," Elias replied evenly. "Where are you from originally? Kansas, most recently. What brings you to Wyoming?" Catherine saw something flicker in Elias's icer moment of caution before he answered. "Looking for work and a place to settle. Plenty of work in town if you're looking for honest employment," Henrik said. "No need to impose on a widow with children." The words carried an edge that made Catherine's temper flare again. But Elias's response was measured and calm. "Mrs. Bell offered me work, Mr. Larson. I didn't impose on anyone." "Did she now?" Henrik turned to Catherine with raised eyebrows. "Offered work to a complete stranger." "That doesn't sound like you, Catherine." Catherine felt trapped between the two men, both of whom seemed to think they knew what was best for her. The sensation was suffocating, reminiscent of all the well-meaning advice she'd received since Thomas's death suggestions that invariably involved giving up her independence in exchange for male protection. "Mr. Thorne has been very helpful," she said firmly, "and I'm perfectly capable of making decisions about my own farm." Henrik's expression softened slightly, but his concerns remained evident. "Of course you are. I just worry about you taking on unnecessary risks." "I appreciate your concern, Henrik, but it's not necessary." The three of them stood in uncomfortable silence for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut. Finally, Henrik nodded stiffly. "All right then, but if you need anything at all, you know where to find me." He mounted his horse with obvious reluctance, casting one more suspicious glance at Elias before riding away. Catherine watched him go, feeling drained by the confrontation. "I'm sorry about that," she said to Elias. "Henrik means well, but no need to apologize, ma'am," Elias replied. "Man's looking out for you the best way he knows how. Can't fault him for that." The generous response surprised Catherine. Most men would have taken offense at Henrik's obvious hostility, but Elias seemed genuinely understanding of the other man's concerns. "Still, he had no right to question you like that. He had every right to be cautious about strangers around people he cares about." Elias said shows he's got good instincts, even if his approach could use some work. Catherine found herself studying Elias with new curiosity. His diplomatic response to Henrik's aggression suggested a man comfortable with conflict, but not inclined to escalate it unnecessarily. There was something almost military in his Beringa quality of disciplined restraint that spoke of training beyond farm work. "Where will you sleep tonight?" she asked, suddenly realizing she hadn't made specific arrangements. "Barn's fine, ma'am. I've got a bedroll and it's warm enough this time of year." "There's a small room above the barn," Catherine said. "It's not much, but it's got a window and a place for your things." "That's very generous, Mrs. Bell. I appreciate it." As Elias headed toward the barn with his leather satchel, Catherine called after him. "Mr. Thorne, thank you for today. You've been a great help." He touched the brim of his hat in acknowledgement, then disappeared into the barn. Catherine stood on the porch for a long time afterward, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky, and wondering what she'd set in motion by inviting this quiet stranger into their lives. A week passed with the rhythm of a well-tuned machine. Each morning, Catherine would find Elias already at work by the time she finished her first cup of coffee. He moved through tasks with methodical efficiency, never needing to be told what needed doing, somehow sensing the farm's requirements as if he'd been born to the land. The change in their daily life was remarkable. Repairs that had been postponed for months were completed, equipment that had limped along with makeshift fixes was restored to proper working order. Even the animals seemed more content responding to Elias's quiet presence with trust that both impressed and puzzled Catherine. It was Samuel who first noticed the wooden horse. "Mama, look what Mr. Thorne made for me," the boy announced, bursting into the kitchen with barely contained excitement. In his hands was a carved horse no bigger than his palm, but crafted with such attention to detail that it seemed almost alive. Catherine took the carving and examined it with wonder. The wood had been sanded smooth as silk, the proportions perfect, the features delicately defined. The horse's mane seemed to flow in an invisible wind, and tiny muscles were suggested beneath the surface. It was the work of someone with considerable skill and patience. "When did he give this to you?" Catherine asked. "Just now. He said he'd been working on it in the evenings." Samuel's eyes shone with delight. "He showed me how the legs are positioned for galloping, and he said real horses move just like this when they're running free." Catherine felt her throat tighten with emotion. In the weeks since Elias's arrival, she'd observed his interactions with her children, noting his patience and respect. But this gift represented something deeper. This was the action of a man who not only cared about Samuel's happiness, but understood what would truly delight an 8-year-old boy. "Did you thank him properly?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I asked if he could teach me to carve, and he said, 'Maybe when I'm a little older.'" Samuel paused, his expression growing serious. "Mama, is Mr. Thorne going to stay, really stay?" The question caught Catherine off guard. She'd been so focused on the day-to-day benefits of Elias's help that she hadn't considered the deeper implications of his presence in their lives. Samuel was clearly growing attached to this quiet man who treated him with adult respect and took time to create something beautiful just for his enjoyment. "I don't know, sweetheart," Catherine said honestly. "Mr. Thorne is a traveling man. He might decide to move on when he's ready." "But he likes it here," Samuel protested. "I can tell, and we like having him here, don't we?" Before Catherine could answer, Mary appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with excitement and her hands cupped carefully in front of her. "Mama, look what I found," she announced, opening her palms to reveal a butterfly with wings like stained glass. "Mr. Eli helped me catch it, but he said we have to let it go because it has important work to do." Mr. Eli. Catherine raised an eyebrow at the nickname. "That's what he said I could call him." Mary explained. "He said Mr. Thorne was too formal for friends, and we're friends now, aren't we?" Catherine watched her daughter gently release the butterfly through the open window, her small face serious with the responsibility of caring for something beautiful and fragile. The sight stirred something deep in Catherine's chest, a recognition of how naturally her children had accepted Elias into their world. Where's Mr. Eli now?" Catherine asked. "Working on the fence by the creek," Samuel replied. "He said there's a weak section that might not hold if we get heavy rains." Catherine nodded, remembering that particular section of fence. Thomas had been planning to reinforce it the summer he died, and she'd been putting off the repair for months, knowing it was beyond her capabilities. "You children stay close to the house," she said. "I'm going to check on his progress." She found Elias exactly where Samuel had indicated, working in the shade of the cottonwoods that lined the creek. He'd removed his shirt in the heat, and Catherine was surprised by the evidence of old injuries across his back, scars that spoke of violence survived rather than simple farm accidents. The sight made her pause, hidden by the trees, as she processed this new information about the man she'd welcomed into their lives. The scars were old, some barely visible, others more pronounced. They told a story of survival that went beyond anything she'd imagined about his past. Elias looked up as she approached, immediately reaching for his shirt with the quick movement of a man unaccustomed to being observed at work. "Mrs. Bell," he said, pulling the shirt over his head. "I didn't hear you coming. I wanted to thank you for the horse you carved for Samuel," Catherine said, deciding not to mention what she'd seen. "It's beautiful work. Boy's been working hard helping with chores," Elias replied, returning to his work on the fence. "Seemed like he'd earned something special." "You didn't have to do that. Room and board was our agreement." "Wasn't part of any agreement," Elias said simply. "Just something I wanted to do." Catherine watched him work, noting the precision of his movements, the way he tested each repair to ensure it would hold. Everything about his approach suggested experience with construction that went beyond simple farm maintenance. "You've done this kind of work before," she observed. Some, Elias acknowledged, learned from men who knew their business. It was the same response he'd given before. But Catherine was beginning to recognize it as a deflection. There was more to Elias Thorne's background than he was willing to share, but she found herself less concerned about the mystery than she might have expected. "The children are growing attached to you," she said instead. Elias paused in his work, his expression serious. "That wasn't my intention, ma'am. If you'd prefer, I keep more distance." "No," Catherine said quickly. "That's not what I meant. They've been happier this week than I've seen them in months. It's just, I don't want them to be hurt if you decide to move on." "I understand your concern," Elias replied. "Truth is, I've been happier this week than I've been in a long time, too. This feels like a good place, Mrs. Bell. Good people. If you'll have me, I'd like to stay on permanent-like." The simple statement hit Catherine with unexpected force. In the weeks since his arrival, she'd grown accustomed to his quiet presence, his steady reliability, his obvious care for her children. The thought of him leaving had begun to create an anxiety she hadn't wanted to acknowledge. "Are you sure?" she asked. "This isn't an easy life. The work is hard, the winters are brutal, and there's no guarantee we'll make enough to keep the farm." "I've lived through hard times before," Elias said, "and I've learned that good people and honest work are worth more than easy circumstances." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes, tears of relief she hadn't expected. "Then, yes," she said, "I'd like you to stay." Something shifted in Elias's expression, a relaxation of tension she hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "Thank you, ma'am. You won't regret it." As they walked back toward the house together, Catherine found herself seeing the farm through new eyes. With Elias's help, the overwhelming list of necessary repairs had become manageable. Equipment that had been failing was restored to reliability. Even the animals seemed more settled, as if they sensed the return of stability to their world. "Mr. Thorne," she said as they reached the yard. "Elias, if you're going to stay, there are some things we should discuss. Practical matters." "Yes, ma'am. First, the children. They're obviously fond of you and you're good with them, but they're my responsibility and their welfare comes before everything else." "Understood completely." "Second, the farm operations. I've been making all the decisions for 2 years now. I'm willing to listen to suggestions, but I need to remain in charge of overall planning." "Wouldn't have it any other way," Elias replied. "It's your land, your family, your choices." Catherine felt another wave of relief at his ready acceptance of her authority. Too many men would have expected to take over simply by virtue of their gender. Third, Henrik Larson and some of the other neighbors are going to have opinions about this arrangement. People talk in small communities, and not all of it will be kind. "Let me worry about handling any problems that come from that direction," Elias said quietly. "Won't be the first time I've dealt with folks who don't approve of my choices." As evening approached, Catherine found herself observing the new dynamics of their household. Samuel shadowed Elias whenever possible, absorbing lessons about farming, woodworking, and what it meant to be a man of reliability and few words. Mary had appointed herself Elias's official flower provider, bringing him daily bouquets that he accepted with grave courtesy and arranged in a tin can on the windowsill of his room above the barn. At dinner, Elias fit into their routine as if he'd always been there. He listened to the children's chatter about their day, offered gentle guidance when Samuel struggled with his arithmetic, and helped Mary practice reading by listening patiently to her halting progress through a primer. "Mr. Eli," Mary said during a pause in the conversation, "do you have children of your own?" Catherine saw Elias stiffen slightly, the first sign of discomfort she'd noticed in his interactions with her daughter. "No, Miss Mary," he said carefully, never had that blessing. "Why not?" Mary asked with the innocent directness that sometimes mortified Catherine. Catherine warned gently, but Elias held up a hand. "It's all right." He said, "Sometimes life just doesn't work out the way we plan. Miss Mary, sometimes the things we want most are the things we can't have." The sadness in his voice was carefully controlled. but Catherine heard it clearly. Whatever losses had driven Elias from Kansas, they went deeper than simple restlessness or economic necessity. "Well," Mary announced with the certainty of childhood, "you can share us, we have enough family to go around." The simple generosity of the statement brought tears to Catherine's eyes, and she saw Elias blink hard before responding. "That's very kind of you, Miss Mary. I'd be honored to be part of your family." Later, after the children were in bed, Catherine sat on the front porch watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The day's heat was finally giving way to the cool relief of evening, and somewhere in the distance, a nightbird called to its mate. Elias emerged from the barn and approached the porch, moving with the careful quietness that seemed natural to him. "Mind if I sit a while?" he asked. "Please do," Catherine replied, gesturing to the chair beside her. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Catherine spoke. "Thank you for what you said to Mary tonight about being part of our family." "Meant every word," Elias replied. "That little girl's got a heart big enough to heal the world." "She's like her father in that way," Catherine said softly. "Thomas believed in the goodness of people sometimes, to a fault." "Tell me about him," Elias said, "if you don't mind the asking." Catherine was surprised by how much she wanted to share. For 2 years, most people had treated Thomas's memory like something too fragile to discuss, tiptoeing around her grief as if mentioning her husband might cause her to shatter. He was a dreamer. She began always planning the next improvement, the next expansion. He could look at a field of stubble and see golden wheat. He could look at a broken-down horse and see a champion. She paused, smiling at the memory. He could look at a scared 19-year-old girl from town and see a farmer's wife. Sounds like a good man with good instincts. He was. Too good for this world, maybe. He trusted everyone, believed everyone deserved a second chance, gave away help even when we couldn't afford it. Catherine's voice caught slightly. The horse that killed him was one he'd bought from a man who swore it was gentle. Thomas thought he could heal whatever had made the animal nervous. "Some hurts run too deep for healing," Elias said quietly. "Maybe, or maybe Thomas just ran out of time to work his magic." Catherine wiped away a tear that had escaped despite her efforts. "I'm sorry, I don't usually talk about it so much." "Nothing to apologize for," Elias said. "Man like that deserves to be remembered." They fell silent again, but it was a different kind of quiet, no deeper, more connected. Catherine felt as if she'd shared something precious and found it received with the respect it deserved. "What about you?" she asked eventually. "What brought you to our door?" Elias was quiet for so long that Catherine thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "Lost my brother 2 years ago," he said. "He was all the family I had left, and when he died, I couldn't bear staying in the place we'd shared. Started traveling, looking for somewhere that felt like home again. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. Charlie was a good man, better than me in most ways. He had faith that things would work out, that people were basically decent, that hard work and honest dealing would see you through." Elias's voice grew softer. "Sounds like he and your husband would have gotten along well." Catherine felt a strange comfort in the parallel between their losses, in the recognition that grief had shaped them both but hadn't broken them. "Maybe they're somewhere together now," she said. "Thomas and your Charlie, comparing notes on how to fix the world." "Maybe so," Elias agreed, "and maybe they sent me here to help you carry on the work they started." The thought was both comforting and unsettling, the idea that Thomas might somehow have guided this quiet stranger to their door when she needed help most. Catherine wasn't sure she believed in such things, but she couldn't deny the rightness she felt in Elias's presence. As the night deepened and the conversation wound down, Catherine realized that something fundamental had shifted in her perception of their arrangement. What had begun as a practical exchange of work for room and board was becoming something more complex, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared understanding of loss. "Good night, Elias," she said as they both rose to go inside. "Good night, Catherine," he replied, and the use of her first name felt like another small step toward something neither of them was quite ready to name. The storm came without warning on a Tuesday evening in late August, transforming the peaceful twilight into a maelstrom of wind and lightning. Catherine had been mending Samuel's torn shirt by lamplight when the first rumble of thunder rolled across the prairie, still distant, but carrying the promise of violence. Mama Mary called from upstairs, her voice tight with the fear that always accompanied severe weather. The child had developed a terror of storms since her father's death, too young to understand the details, but old enough to associate thunder with loss. Catherine set aside her sewing and climbed the stairs to find Mary huddled in her bed covers pulled up to her chin. Samuel sat on the edge of his own bed, trying to appear brave but clearly troubled by the approaching storm. "It's going to be all right," Catherine said, settling between them. "It's just a thunderstorm. The house is solid, and we're safe inside." Lightning flashed, illuminating the room in stark white, followed immediately by thunder that seemed to shake the very foundations. Mary whimpered and reached for her mother. "That was close," Samuel observed, trying to sound matter-of-fact, but unable to hide the tremor in his voice. Another flash lit the sky, and Catherine saw something that made her heart leap into her throat. Through the window she could see the barn door swinging wildly in the wind, and there was no sign of Elias. He should have been securing the animals by now, making sure they were safe from the storm's fury. "Stay here," she told the children. "Stay in this room no matter what you hear, understand?" "Mama, where are you going?" Samuel asked. But Catherine was already moving, grabbing Thomas's old work coat from the hook by the door. The coat hung loose on her smaller frame, but it was heavy canvas that would provide some protection from the driving rain that had begun to lash the windows. She pulled on her boots and stepped out into the storm. The wind hit her like a physical blow, nearly knocking her off balance. Rain stung her face and soaked through her clothing in seconds. She had to fight her way across the yard, leaning into the gale and struggling to see through the sheets of water. "Elias," she called, but her voice was lost in the howling wind. Lightning illuminated the scene in strobing flashes, the barn doors banging, loose boards flying through the air, the horses panicked, whinnying audible even above the storm's roar. Catherine pushed toward the barn, her boots slipping in the mud that was already forming in the yard. She found Elias in the barn, working frantically to calm the terrified animals. Thunder and Belle were wild with fear, their eyes rolling white in the dim light of a single lantern. The storm had driven them into a frenzy, and their panic was spreading to the other livestock. The door, Elias shouted over the noise, gesturing toward the barn entrance that continued to slam back and forth. "Help me get it secured." Catherine fought her way to the door, adding her weight to Elias's as they struggled to force it closed against the wind. The latch was broken, torn loose by the violent motion, and they had to hold the door in place, while Elias improvised a repair. Working together, they managed to wedge a piece of timber against the door, creating enough of a barrier to keep it from flying open again. But the barn itself was shuddering under the storm's assault, and Catherine could hear boards creaking ominously overhead. The horses, Elias said, moving back toward Thunder, who was rearing and striking at the air with his front hooves. "They're going to hurt themselves if we can't calm them down." Catherine watched in amazement as Elias approached the panicked animal with no sign of fear. He moved slowly, his voice low and steady, speaking in tones too quiet for her to hear over the storm, but somehow reaching the horse, despite the chaos. Thunder's ears flicked toward Elias, and gradually the horse's wild movements began to settle. Belle, seeing her companion growing calmer, started to respond as well. Within minutes, Elias had both horses standing quietly, their terror replaced by trust in his steady presence. "How did you do that?" Catherine asked, her voice full of wonder. "Horses know when someone's afraid," Elias replied, checking the animals for injuries. "Stay calm yourself, and they'll feel it." A tremendous crash from outside made them both freeze. Through the gaps in the barn walls, they could see that one of the large cottonwoods by the creek had fallen, its massive trunk now blocking the path to the house. "The children," Catherine gasped, starting toward the door. "Wait." Elias caught her arm. "That tree's down across the main route, but there's another way. Going out in this wind right now would be suicide. We need to wait for a lull." As if summoned by his words, the storm's fury seemed to pause for a moment. The wind dropped to a manageable howl and the rain lessened slightly. "Now," Elias said, and they ran together toward the house. They found Samuel and Mary huddled together on the stairs, their faces white with fear. The sound of the falling tree had terrified them, and Mary was crying inconsolably. "Mama," she sobbed, throwing herself into Catherine's arms. "I thought the storm took you away, like it took Papa." Catherine's heart broke at her daughter's words. She gathered both children close, feeling their small bodies trembling against her. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm safe, and so are you." Elias stood in the doorway, water streaming from his clothes, his presence somehow reassuring despite the chaos outside. Samuel looked up at him with eyes that held both fear and relief. "Is the barn okay?" the boy asked. "The barn's fine," Elias assured him. "The animals are safe. Your mama helped me make sure of that." Mama went out in the storm. Mary's voice was filled with awe and terror. "Your mama's the bravest woman I know," Elias said simply. "She risked her own safety to help save the animals." Catherine felt a flush of warmth at his words, but also a recognition of how naturally he deflected credit from himself. He'd been the one to calm the terrified horses, the one to secure the barn against the wind, yet he spoke only of her contribution. The storm raged through the night, but they weathered it together in the main room of the house. Elias had changed into one of Thomas's old shirts. Catherine had offered it without thinking, and he'd accepted without comment. The garment fit him well enough, and seeing him in Thomas's clothes stirred something complex in Catherine's chest. Mary fell asleep, curled against Catherine's side, while Samuel dozed fitfully in the big chair by the fireplace. Catherine and Elias sat together on the couch, listening to the storm's assault on their home, both too keyed up from the evening's drama to sleep. "Thank you," Catherine said quietly, "for what you did with the horses. I've never seen anything like it." "Animals respond to confidence," Elias replied. "Most fear comes from uncertainty. Show them you know what you're doing, and they'll trust you to keep them safe. Is that how you learn to handle them? Through confidence." Elias was quiet for a moment, staring into the fireplace where the flames danced in the draft from the storm. "I had a good teacher once, man, who understood that strength isn't about 4 seats, about knowing when to be gentle and when to be firm. Your brother, among others." Elias's voice carried a note of old sadness. Charlie had a way with all living things, said it came from respecting what they were, instead of trying to make them something else. Catherine found herself studying Elias's profile in the firelight. The storm had stripped away some of his usual careful control, and she could see hints of the man beneath the polite surface, someone who'd known loss and hardship but hadn't let it make him bitter. "You miss him," she observed. Every day, Elias admitted he was better at this kind of life than I ever was, better at believing in people, better at seeing the good in situations. "I keep thinking he'd know what to do, how to help you and the children in ways I can't figure out." "You're helping more than you know," Catherine said softly. "Tonight, for instance, I couldn't have handled that storm alone. The horses would have been hurt or worse, and the children would have been terrified the whole time. You would have found a way," Elias said with quiet certainty. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." The simple statement, delivered without flattery or exaggeration, hit Catherine harder than any elaborate compliment could have. She'd spent 2 years feeling like she was barely keeping her head above water, struggling to maintain the facade of competence while drowning in uncertainty. To have someone see her efforts and recognize them as strength was a gift she hadn't expected. "I don't always feel strong," she admitted. "Strength isn't about not being afraid," Elias replied. "It's about doing what needs to be done despite the fear. You've been doing that every day since I met you." They sat in comfortable silence after that, listening to the storm's gradual retreat and the peaceful breathing of the sleeping children. Catherine found herself acutely aware of Elias's presence beside her, warmth radiating from his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the sense of security his nearness provided. It had been so long since she'd felt protected instead of protective, supported instead of supporting. The sensation was both welcome and unsettling, stirring feelings she'd thought buried with Thomas. As dawn approached, the storm finally exhausted itself, leaving behind a world transformed. Through the windows, Catherine could see fallen branches, scattered debris, and standing water reflecting the gray sky. But the house had held the barn was intact. Her family was safe. "We should check the damage," she said reluctantly, moving away from the warmth of the fire and Elias's steady presence. "Let me go first," Elias suggested. "Make sure it's safe before the children come out." Catherine wanted to protest that she could handle the assessment herself, but she realized that accepting help didn't diminish her independence. It just made her stronger. "All right, but I'm coming with you." They woke the children gently and left them in the kitchen with instructions to stay inside until given the all clear. Outside, the air was fresh and cool, washed clean by the storm's passage. The damage was significant, but not catastrophic. Several trees down part of the chicken coop roof torn away and the garden flattened by hail and wind. "Could have been worse," Elias observed, surveying the scene. "We can repair most of this with time and materials." Catherine asked, though she already knew the answer. "If you'll have the help," Elias replied. "Seems like we make a good team when things get tough." Catherine looked around at the storm's aftermath and realized he was right. They had worked together seamlessly during the crisis, each contributing their strengths without stepping on the other's authority. It was a partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose, something she hadn't expected to find again after Thomas's death. "Yes," she said, "we do make a good team." As they walked back to the house to reassure the children and begin planning the cleanup, Catherine found herself wearing Thomas's old work shirt that she'd thrown on over her nightgown. The fabric smelled faintly of soap and sunshine, from her efforts to keep her husband's clothes fresh, but now it also carried Elias's scent from when he'd worn it during the storm. The mingling of past and present in that simple garment seemed symbolic of the changes taking place in her life. She wasn't replacing Thomas or forgetting their love. She was adding new layers to her story, accepting help and companionship that honored the past while embracing the future. When Samuel and Mary saw them returning safely, they rushed out to hear about the storm's damage. Catherine watched Elias kneel down to their level, explaining what had happened in terms they could understand, emphasizing the positive aspects while acknowledging their concerns. "The chicken coop needs a new roof," he told them, "but all the chickens are fine, and that big tree that fell, it's going to give us plenty of firewood for next winter." "Can we help fix things?" Samuel asked eagerly. "Absolutely," Elias replied. "Going to need all hands working together to get everything back to normal." As the family and Catherine realized she was thinking of them as a family, now began planning their recovery from the storm, she felt a sense of completion she hadn't experienced in years. They were no longer a broken household struggling to survive, but a united team ready to face whatever challenges came their way. The storm had tested them, and they had proven themselves stronger together than any of them could have been alone. September arrived with the golden light that spoke of harvest time and the subtle shift in the air that promised autumn's approach. The storm damage had been repaired through long days of shared labor, and the farm had settled into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Catherine found herself looking forward to the quiet conversations she and Elias shared in the evenings when the day's work was done and the children were sleeping. It was during one of these peaceful moments that Catherine made a decision that surprised even her. She rose from her chair on the porch and disappeared into the house, returning with Thomas's farming journal, the leather-bound book she'd guarded so carefully, reading his words in private like sacred texts. "I want to show you something," she said, settling back into her chair beside Elias. She opened the journal to a page near the middle where a pressed wildflower lay flat against the cream-colored paper. The flower had once been purple prairie aster that had caught Thomas's attention during one of his walks through the fields. His handwriting surrounded it notes about the soil conditions where it had grown, and thoughts about rotating crops to encourage native wildflowers along the field edges. "Thomas pressed this the summer before he died." Catherine said, her voice soft with memory. "He said the wildflowers were as important as the wheat that they brought bees and butterflies, and that beauty was part of farming too." Elias studied the page with careful attention, reading Thomas's notes with the respect of one farmer for another's wisdom. He was right. Elias said finally. Man who understands that land needs more than just crops, understands something important about life. Catherine turned the pages, slowly sharing passages that had sustained her through the darkest months. Thomas's observations about weather patterns, his plans for improving the farm, his hopes for their children's future, all written in the neat, precise hand she'd fallen in love with when they'd exchanged their first letters. He wanted to expand the wheat fields by 10 acres, she said, pointing to a detailed sketch, thought we could afford new equipment within 5 years if the harvests held good. Still, could Elias observed, studying the calculations in the margins, his numbers are sound with good management and decent weather. There's no reason this place couldn't support that kind of growth. Catherine felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in Yershop for a future that extended beyond simple survival. You really think so? I do. Your husband knew this land, understood what it could produce. Most of his plans are still viable, just need someone to execute them. They sat in comfortable silence as Catherine continued to turn pages, sharing memories and observations when she reached the section where Thomas had written about their courtship. She hesitated. You don't have to share everything, Elias said gently, sensing her uncertainty. Some memories are meant to be private. No, it's all right, Catherine replied, though her voice was less steady now. I want you to understand who he was, what this place meant to him. She read aloud Thomas's account of their wedding day, his joy at bringing her to the farm, his dreams of the family they would build together. The words were full of love and optimism, written by a man who believed in happy endings and second chances. He sounds like he was a good man, Elias said when she finished reading. He was sometimes, I think he was too good, too trusting, too generous. He'd give away our last dollar if he thought someone needed it more. Catherine's voice caught slightly, but he made me believe in goodness too. Made me think that kindness was strength, not weakness. Maybe it is, Elias replied. Maybe the strongest thing a person can do is keep believing in goodness despite all the evidence to the contrary. Catherine looked at him with curiosity. Is that what you believe? Elias was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the first stars were beginning to appear. I'm trying to, he said finally. There was a time when I thought kindness was just foolishness, that the world was too harsh for gentle souls to survive. But being here, seeing how you've carried on Thomas's legacy, watching how your children respond to love instead of hardness, it's changing my mind about some things. What changed your mind before? What made you think kindness was foolishness? Elias's expression grew distant, and Catherine saw him wrestling with memories he rarely allowed to surface the war. He said simply, saw too much cruelty, too much waste. Good men dying while bad men prospered after a while. It seemed like being decent was just a way to get yourself killed. Catherine felt her heart contract with sympathy for the pain she heard in his voice. You were in the war. Union Army, served 3 years before he stopped himself, then started again. Before I had to leave to take care of family business, your brother among other things. Elias's voice was carefully neutral, but Catherine sensed deeper currents beneath the surface. Charlie was younger than me, always looked up to me to protect him when he got sick. I had to choose between my duty to the Army and my duty to him. That must have been a difficult decision. Hardest thing I ever did. Elias admitted left my unit in the middle of a campaign, knowing they'd probably call it desertion, but Charlie was dying and he was all the family I had left. I couldn't let him face that alone. Catherine reached over and placed her hand gently on his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. You did the right thing, tell that to the Army, Elias said with bitter humor. They didn't see it that way. Something in his tone made Catherine's blood run cold. Elias, are you in trouble with the military? He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer when he finally spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. There's a warrant out for my desertion, has been for 2 years now. Most places I go, it doesn't matter. The war's over and they've got bigger concerns. But it follows me wherever I settle. Catherine felt the world shift beneath her feet. The man she'd come to trust, the man her children adored, was a fugitive from military justice. All the careful progress they'd made, all the trust they'd built suddenly felt fragile as spun glass. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, though. She kept her voice calm despite the turmoil in her chest. "Would you have let me stay?" "If you'd known," Elias asked honestly. Catherine considered the question seriously. A month ago, the answer would have been a definitive no. She couldn't have risked her children's safety or her reputation on a deserter, no matter how desperate her circumstances. But now, having seen Elias's character demonstrated through countless small actions, having witnessed his gentleness with her children and his respect for her authority, the answer was more complex. "I don't know," she said finally, "but I deserve the chance to make that choice." "You're right," Elias said. "Simply, I should have told you from the beginning. I was selfish. I needed this place, needed the peace I found here. I told myself I was protecting you from complications, but really, I was protecting myself from losing the first home I'd found since Charlie died." Catherine struggled with competing emotions: betrayal that he'd kept such important information from her, but also understanding of the desperation that had driven his silence. She thought of her own secrets, her own fears about the future, her own moments of choosing self-preservation over complete honesty. "Tell me about Charlie," she said, instead of addressing the desertion directly. "Help me understand what drove you to risk everything for him." Elias's expression softened at the mention of his brother. "Charlie was everything. I wasn't gentle, optimistic, believing the best of everyone he met. Our parents died when he was just 12, and I raised him from then on. Taught him to read, taught him to work, tried to teach him to be careful of people who might take advantage of his good nature, but you couldn't protect him from getting sick." "Consumption," Elias said, the word carrying the weight of helpless rage. Started as a cough, then got worse and worse, until he could barely breathe. "I got word he was dying while I was with Sherman's army in Georgia. My commanding officer said I could have 3 days leave, but Charlie was in Kansas, and I was in enemy territory. 3 days wasn't nearly enough, so you left without permission, deserted." Elias corrected bluntly. "Let's call it what it was. I abandoned my post. Left my unit, rode hard for 2 weeks to get to Charlie's bedside, and you made it in time, barely. He lived another month after I got there, and I was with him every day. He died knowing he wasn't alone, knowing someone loved him enough to risk everything for him." Elias's voice grew thick with emotion. "I'd make the same choice again, warrant or no warrant." Catherine felt tears sliding down her cheeks, for Charlie, for Elias, for the impossible choice between duty and love that had shaped both their lives. "I'm sorry you lost him." "Thank you." Elias said he was a good man. "Like your Thomas. The world's a poor place without men like them in it." They sat in silence as the night deepened around them, both lost in memories of the people they'd loved and lost. Catherine found herself thinking about the parallel paths that had brought them to this moment. Two people shaped by grief, learning to trust again despite the risks. "What will you do if they find you?" she asked. "Eventually face whatever consequences come," Elias replied. "I won't run anymore, won't bring trouble to people who don't deserve it. If they want to court-martial me for choosing family over orders, so be it. And until then, I'd like to stay here, if you'll have me. I know it's asking a lot, knowing what you know. Now I understand if you need me to leave." Catherine thought about Samuel's carved horse, about Mary's daily bouquets, about the fence repairs and storm damage, and countless small kindnesses that had transformed their lives. She thought about Thomas's journal, about his belief in second chances and the power of goodness to triumph over hardship. "I need time to think," she said finally. "This changes things, and I can't pretend it doesn't." "I understand," Elias replied. "Whatever you decide, I'm grateful for the weeks I've had here, this place, your family. You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that hope?" Elias said. "Simply hope that there are still good people in the world, still places where a man can belong." As they prepared to go inside, Catherine found herself torn between practical concerns and the deeper truth of her heart. Elias's desertion was a serious matter that could bring unwanted attention to her farm, potentially threatening everything she'd worked to build. But she'd also seen his character demonstrated in ways that transcended any official record. He'd risked his life to save her animals during the storm, had treated her children with respect, and affection, had honored Thomas's memory while helping her build toward the future, standing in the doorway of her home, watching Elias walk toward the barn where he'd made his modest quarters. Catherine realized that trust was not about knowing all the facts. It was about believing in the fundamental goodness of another person, despite the risks that belief entailed. She thought of the pressed wildflower in Thomas's journal, preserved between pages of dreams and plans. Some things were worth preserving despite their fragility, worth protecting, despite the cost tomorrow. She would have to decide whether Elias Thorne, deserter and fugitive, was one of those things. Tonight she would hold him in her prayers and ask Thomas's spirit to guide her toward the choice that would honor both the past and the future. The morning brought no easy answers, only the relentless demands of farm life that waited for no one's personal struggles. Catherine rose before dawn as always, but her movements felt mechanical as she went through the familiar routines of coffee preparation and morning chores. The weight of Elias's revelation sat heavy in her chest, complicating every interaction with its presence. She found him already at work in the barn, tending to the horses with the same gentle efficiency he'd shown every morning for the past month. When he looked up and met her eyes, she saw the question, their uncertainty about where they stood, fear that his honesty had cost him the home he'd found with them. "Good morning," she said simply, offering neither reassurance nor dismissal. "Morning, Catherine," he replied, then returned his attention to brushing Thunder's coat with long, methodical strokes. The children sensed the tension at breakfast, though they couldn't identify its source. Samuel picked at his food with unusual quietness, while Mary chattered more than usual, as if trying to fill the uncomfortable silence with her bright voice. "Mr. Eli," Mary announced, "I found a baby bird yesterday that fell from its nest. Mama said we shouldn't touch it, but I wanted to help it." "Your mama was right," Elias replied, his voice gentle, despite the strain Catherine could hear beneath the surface. "Sometimes the best help we can give is to let nature take its course. But what if it was scared and lonely? Then it would have to be brave," Elias said, glancing briefly at Catherine. "Sometimes being scared and lonely is part of growing strong enough to fly." Catherine recognized the deeper meaning in his words, an acknowledgement of his own vulnerability and his willingness to face whatever consequences his honesty had brought. The recognition stirred something protective in her chest, a response she hadn't expected after breakfast. As the children played in the yard under the supervision of their neighbor's visiting daughter, Catherine found herself walking toward the small cemetery on the hill behind the house. Thomas rested there beneath a simple headstone surrounded by the wildflowers he'd loved so much in life. She settled on the wooden bench Elias had built beside the grave, another of his quiet gifts that had appeared without fanfare or expectation of acknowledgement. The morning sun cast long shadows across the peaceful space, and a gentle breeze stirred the grass around Thomas's marker. "I don't know what to do," she said aloud, addressing the man who'd shaped her understanding of love and trust. "You always believed in second chances, in the goodness of people despite their mistakes. But this is bigger than anything we ever faced together." A sound behind her made her turn, and she saw Elias approaching slowly, his hat in his hands and his expression uncertain. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said. "I saw you heading up here and thought, well, I brought something I wanted to show you if you're willing." Catherine nodded, curious despite her emotional turmoil. Elias settled beside her on the bench, maintaining careful distance, and withdrew a folded paper from his shirt pocket. The document was worn soft with handling its creases. "Speaking of frequent examination, this is the last letter Charlie wrote," Elias said, unfolding the paper with reverent care. "He was so weak by then that I had to help him hold the pen, but he insisted on writing it himself." Catherine accepted the letter when he offered it. noting how her name was written across the top in shaky handwriting for the woman who gives my brother a home. "He wrote this for me?" she asked, surprised Charlie always believed in things before they happened. Elias explained, said I'd find a place to belong. Eventually, someone who'd see past my mistakes to the man I was trying to become. He wanted you to know who I really was, in case questions ever arose about my past. Catherine read the letter, slowly touched by the young man's faith in his brother's future. Charlie had written about Elias's character, his sacrifices during their childhood, his struggles with the violence of war, and his journey toward healing. But most importantly, he'd written about love, about how Elias had given up everything to be with him during his final weeks, choosing family over duty without hesitation or regret. The army came to arrest me the day after Charlie's funeral. Elias continued quietly, but their paperwork was wrong. They had me listed as deserting 2 weeks before I actually left. Charlie's doctor provided documentation that I'd been granted compassionate leave, that my absence was approved for. Family medical emergency. Catherine looked up from the letter, her heart pounding. "You mean the desertion charge was based on incorrect dates?" Elias confirmed I was cleared of all wrongdoing, officially discharged with honor. But by then, I'd been running for so long that I'd forgotten how to stop, kept moving, kept looking over my shoulder, even though there was no one chasing me anymore. Catherine felt her world shift again, but this time toward relief rather than fear. "You're not a fugitive." "No, ma'am, haven't been for over a year now, though it took me that long to discover the mistake had been corrected." Elias's voice grew softer. "I should have told you about the original charge when I first arrived, should have explained that it had been resolved. But I'd gotten so used to carrying that shame, that fear of being discovered, that I couldn't quite believe I was really free." Catherine reread Charlie's letter, seeing it now in the light of Elias's explanation. The young man had written with the confidence of someone who knew his brother's integrity, who trusted that truth would eventually prevail over bureaucratic confusion. "Why tell me now?" she asked. "Why not just let me go on believing you were in trouble?" "Because last night, sharing Thomas's journal with me, talking about trust and honesty, I realized I was doing exactly what I'd learned to hate in others. I was letting fear make me dishonest with someone who deserved better." Catherine folded the letter carefully and handed it back to him. "You were protecting yourself. That's understandable maybe, but it wasn't right. You opened your home to me, trusted me with your children, shared your grief and your hopes. The least I could do was trust you with the truth about my past." They sat in silence for several minutes, both processing the implications of this new information. Catherine found herself feeling lighter than she had since their conversation the night before, but also slightly foolish for the worry she'd carried. "I'm glad you told me," she said. "Finally, both versions of the truth. It helps me understand who you are, what shaped you into the man I've come to know, and what man is." That Elias asked, his voice carrying a vulnerability she rarely heard from him. Catherine considered the question seriously, thinking about all the ways Elias had revealed his character through action rather than words. A man who chooses love over duty when the choice matters most. A man who knows how to be gentle with children and animals and grieving widows. A man who understands that real strength comes from helping others, not from proving your own power. She paused, looking out over the farm that stretched below them. The golden wheat fields, the sturdy barn. The house where her children played safely in the yard. "A man very much like the one buried here," she added softly. Elias followed her gaze, taking in the peaceful scene. "I hope someday I'll be worthy of that comparison. You already are," Catherine said, surprising herself with a certainty in her voice. "Thomas would have liked you, Elias. He would have appreciated your honesty, your willingness to sacrifice for the people you love." As they walked back down the hill together, Catherine felt a sense of resolution settling over her. The revelations of the past day had tested the foundation of trust they'd been building. But rather than weakening it, the truth had made it stronger. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor in the form of Henrik Larsson, who rode into the yard with the determined expression of a man on a mission. Catherine watched from the kitchen window as he dismounted, Noting his formal dress and the deliberate way he surveyed the farm's improvements, Catherine, Henrik called, approaching the house with purposeful strides. "I need to speak with you." She met him on the porch, aware that Elias was working within earshot near the barn. Samuel and Mary had suspended their play to watch the interaction with curious eyes. "What can I do for you, Henrik?" Catherine asked, maintaining the polite distance that had characterized their interactions since his last visit. "I've been thinking about your situation." Henrik began, his voice carrying the weight of a prepared speech about the challenges you're facing, the risks of relying on strangers. "I'm managing quite well." "Thank you, are you?" Henrik's gaze moved pointedly toward Elias, who continued his work with studied indifference. "Catherine, you're a young woman with children to protect you, need security, stability. Not whatever this arrangement is." Catherine felt her temper begin to rise at his presumptuous tone. "This arrangement, as you call it, has been nothing but beneficial for my family, for now perhaps. But what happens when your hired man decides to move on? What happens when winter comes and you're alone again with responsibilities too heavy for any woman to bear? Then I'll handle it the same way I've been handling everything else for the past 2 years, with determination and hard work." Henrik stepped closer, his voice dropping to what he clearly thought was a persuasive tone. "Catherine, I'm offering you something better. Marriage to me would solve all your problems. Your children would have a father. Your farm would have a man's guidance, and you'd have the security that comes from being properly protected." Catherine felt a flash of anger at his words. The implication that she needed proper protection, that her current life was somehow inadequate or inappropriate. "Henrik, I've told you before that I'm not interested in remarrying. My situation is perfectly acceptable as it is." "Is it?" Henrik's voice grew more insistent. "Catherine, people are talking a widow living alone with a strange man, letting him work so close to your children. It doesn't look right. I don't care how it looks to people who don't understand the situation, but you should care." Henrik pressed. "You should care about your reputation, about your children's standing in the community. What kind of example are you setting for Samuel and Mary?" The question hit Catherine like a physical blow, striking at her deepest fears about her parenting. She was acutely aware of the challenges her children would face growing up without their father, and the last thing she wanted was to add social stigma to their burdens. But as she looked across the yard at Samuel and Mary, who were watching the interaction with worried expressions, she realized something important. Her children weren't ashamed of their family's arrangement with Elias. They were happier and more secure than they'd been since Thomas's death. "The example I'm setting," Catherine said firmly, "is that a woman can make her own choices about her life and her family, that accepting help doesn't mean surrendering independence, and that good people should be judged by their actions, not their circumstances." Henrik's face flushed with frustrated anger. "Catherine, be reasonable. I'm offering you marriage, a stable home, financial security. What can this drifter offer you? How do you even know you can trust him?" Before Catherine could respond, Samuel's clear voice cut through the tension. "We trust him because he takes care of us," the boy said, stepping closer to his mother with the protective instincts he'd inherited from both his parents. "He helped Mama save the animals during the storm, and he made me a horse, and he's teaching me to be a good man." Samuel, Catherine began, but her son wasn't finished, and he doesn't try to tell Mama what to do. Like some people, Samuel continued, his young voice carrying surprising authority. "He helps her make things better, but he lets her be in charge because it's our farm and our family." Henrik stared at the 8-year-old boy with obvious surprise. Clearly not having expected resistance from that quarter. When he looked back at Catherine, she could see him struggling to maintain his composure. "Children don't understand these matters," Henrik said dismissively. "They don't see the bigger picture, the long-term consequences." The long-term consequences of what Elias's quiet voice interrupted as he approached from the barn. His posture relaxed, but his eyes alert. Henrik turned to face him with poorly concealed hostility. The consequences of a widow making impractical decisions based on temporary convenience rather than permanent security. "I see," Elias replied calmly. "And you consider yourself qualified to determine what constitutes security for Mrs. Bell and her children." "I consider myself more qualified than a stranger with no roots in this community. That's a fair point." Elias acknowledged, surprising everyone with his diplomatic response. You've known Catherine and the children longer than I have, and you clearly care about their welfare. That speaks well of your character. Henrik blinked, obviously having expected a more confrontational response, but Elias continued. Caring about someone's welfare and understanding what they actually need aren't always the same thing. Sometimes the people closest to a situation are the ones least able to see it clearly, and you think you can see it clearly, Henrik asked skeptically. I think Catherine can see it clearly, Elias replied, his voice carrying quiet conviction. She's been making difficult decisions and carrying heavy responsibilities for 2 years now. She's proven herself more than capable of determining what's best for her family. Catherine felt a surge of gratitude for Elias's words, not because he was defending her, but because he was affirming her competence and autonomy in a way that Henrik's proposal never could. That's all well and good, Henrik said, his frustration becoming more evident, but good intentions don't pay bills or protect families from hardship. Catherine needs practical solutions, not philosophical discussions about independence. You're right, that practical solutions matter, Elias agreed, but they have to be solutions that fit the person and the situation. What works for one family might not work for another. Henrik's patience finally snapped. And what exactly are you offering this family, stranger? What practical solutions do you bring besides temporary labor and false promises? Catherine saw something shift in Elias's expression. Not anger, but a deepening of his usual quiet intensity. When he spoke, his voice was still calm, but carried an undertone of steel. I offer honest work without expecting anything in return. Except what's freely given, I offer respect for Catherine's authority over her own life, instead of trying to replace her judgment with my own, and I offer my presence for as long as I'm wanted without conditions or ultimatums. The implied contrast with Henrik's approach was clear, and the other man's face darkened with anger. Pretty words, Henrik said harshly, but words don't build security. Marriage does, legal commitment does, having a man's name and protection does. Does it? Elias asked quietly, because it seems to me that Catherine already has protection, her own strength, her children's love, her community's respect for what she's accomplished. Adding a man's name to that doesn't necessarily make it stronger. Catherine watched the exchange with growing clarity about the fundamental difference between the two men. Henrik saw her as a problem to be solved, a responsibility to be managed. Elias saw her as a person to be respected, a partner to be supported. Henrik, she said, stepping forward to reclaim control of the conversation. I appreciate your concern and your offer, but my answer remains the same. I'm not interested in remarrying, and I'm satisfied with my current arrangements, Catherine. Please, my decision is final, she said firmly. I hope we can remain good neighbors, but this conversation is over. Henrik looked back and forth between Catherine and Elias, his expression shifting from anger to something that might have been defeat. Finally, he nodded stiffly. I hope you don't come to regret this choice, he said. When winter comes, when the work gets harder, when you realize what you've given up for the sake of misplaced independence, I hope you remember that there was another option. He mounted his horse with jerky movements, his dignity clearly wounded, before riding away. He turned back one more time, and I hope your hired man proves more reliable than most of his kind. He added the words, carrying a bitter edge after Henrik disappeared down the road. Catherine found herself standing in the yard with Elias and her children, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the peaceful scene. Samuel and Mary had moved closer during the confrontation, instinctively seeking the protection of the adults they trusted. I'm sorry about that, Catherine said to Elias. Henrik means, well, but he doesn't understand. He understands exactly what he needs to understand. Elias interrupted gently. He sees a woman. He cares about making choices he wouldn't make. And he's trying to protect her the only way he knows how. You're very generous in your interpretation, maybe. Or maybe I recognize something of myself in his position. Someone who cares so much about protecting someone that he can't see, when his protection isn't wanted or needed. Catherine studied Elias's face, seeing the self-awareness that constantly surprised her. "Is that what you did with Charlie?" "Sometimes," Elias admitted, tried so hard to keep him safe from the world that I forgot to ask what kind of safety he actually wanted. The honesty of the admission touched Catherine deeply. It was yet another example of Elias's ability to examine his own motivations without flinching, to learn from his mistakes rather than simply defending them well. She said, looking around at her family, because that's what they were now. She realized a family bound not by law or convention, but by choice and mutual care. "I think it's time we stopped worrying about what other people think we should do and focused on what actually works for us." "Does this work for you?" Mama Mary asked, with a directness that never failed to cut straight to the heart of things. Catherine looked at her daughter, then at Samuel, then at Elias. The man who'd appeared at their door, with nothing but a willingness to work hard and ask for little in return. She thought about the changes in their lives over the past weeks, the way laughter had returned to their house, the way her burdens had become lighter when shared. "Yes, sweetheart," she said with complete certainty. "This works very well for us," as evening approached and they gathered for another family dinner. Catherine reflected on the day's revelations and confrontations. The truth about Elias's past had initially frightened her, but ultimately it had deepened her trust in his character. Henrik's proposal had forced her to articulate what she truly wanted from life, and her rejection of it had clarified her commitment to the path she'd chosen. Most importantly, she'd seen how naturally Elias had defended her autonomy rather than trying to claim authority over her decisions in a world where most men expected women to defer to their judgment. His respect for her independence was both rare and precious. After the children were in bed, Catherine and Elias resumed their evening conversation on the porch. The September air carried the first hint of autumn's coolness, and the sound of crickets filled the comfortable silence between them. "Thank you," Catherine said eventually, "for what you said to Henrik today. For supporting my right to make my own choices. Thank you for making choices that include me." Elias replied, "I know it's not always easy having me here. I know it raises questions and creates complications. The best things in life usually do." Catherine said, thinking of Thomas's memory and the new feelings stirring in her heart. "But that doesn't make them less worthwhile." As the stars emerged overhead and the peaceful sounds of their farm settled around them, Catherine felt a deep sense of rightness about the life they were building together. It wasn't the conventional path, wasn't what others expected or approved of, but it was theirs, built on mutual respect, shared responsibility, and the kind of quiet love that grew from understanding rather than passion. And for the first time since Thomas's death, that felt like more than enough. October arrived with the crisp beauty of harvest season, and the wheat fields stood ready for cutting. Catherine had never seen the farm look so prosperous, the result of months of careful work and Elias's quiet expertise. The approaching harvest promised to be their best in years, enough to not only meet their immediate needs, but perhaps begin some of the expansions Thomas had dreamed about. It was on a Tuesday morning, with frost sparkling on the grass and the sun painting the wheat fields gold, that everything changed. Catherine was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she heard the sound of multiple horses approaching at a steady pace. Through the window she could see 3 riders in blue uniforms cresting the hill that led to their farm. Her blood ran cold as she recognized the insignia of the U.S. "Cavalry, Samuel Mary," she called, trying to keep her voice calm, despite the fear climbing her throat. "Stay inside until I tell you otherwise." She stepped onto the porch just as Elias emerged from the barn, his expression alert but not yet alarmed. He'd been currying thunder, and he still held the brush in his hand as he watched the approaching soldiers. The lead rider was a captain, his uniform pristine. Despite the long journey that had brought him to their remote farm, he dismounted with military precision, his pale eyes taking in every detail of the scene before him. "Ma'am," he said, touching the brim of his hat in Catherine's direction before turning his attention to Elias. "I'm Captain Morrison, United States Cavalry. I'm looking for a man named Elias Thorne." Catherine's heart hammered against her ribs, but Elias stepped forward calmly, setting down the curry brush with deliberate care. "I'm Elias Thorne," he said simply. Captain Morrison reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded document, the official seal visible even from Catherine's position on the porch. "Sergeant Thorne, you're under arrest for desertion of your post during active military service. The charges date from August 1863, and there's a warrant for your immediate apprehension." Catherine felt the world tilt beneath her feet. This couldn't be happening. Not now, not when everything was finally falling into place. Elias had shown her the letter approving his discharge, had explained that the charges had been dismissed. There had to be some mistake. "Captain," Elias said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation, "I believe there's been an error. Those charges were dismissed over a year ago when it was proven that my absence was authorized compassionate leave." "That's not what my papers say," Captain Morrison replied curtly. According to military records, Sergeant Elias Thorne deserted his unit in August 1863 and has been a fugitive from justice ever since. Catherine found her voice and stepped forward. "There's been a mistake, Captain. Mr. Thorne has documentation proving his discharge was honorable." Captain Morrison's cold gaze shifted to her briefly before returning to Elias. "Ma'am, this is military business. I'd advise you to stay out of it." "This is my property," Catherine said firmly, anger overriding her fear, "and Mr. Thorne is my employee. I have every right to be involved in this conversation." Elias made a small gesture with his hand, a warning for her to be careful not to antagonize the soldiers unnecessarily. But Catherine was beyond caution, now driven by a protective fury she'd never experienced before. "Show them the letter," she said to Elias. "Show them Charlie's letter and the discharge papers." Elias nodded and moved toward the barn where his belongings were kept. But Captain Morrison's sharp voice stopped him. "Stay where you are, Sergeant. Any sudden movements will be considered an attempt to flee." "He's not trying to flee," Catherine snapped. "He's trying to get the documents that prove your charges are false." "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time to step back and let us handle this situation." Catherine saw one of the other soldiers, a young corporal who looked barely old enough to shave, place his hand on his weapon. The casual threat made her blood boil, but Elias's calm voice cut through her anger. "Catherine, it's all right," he said quietly. "Let me handle this." He turned back to Captain Morrison, his posture respectful but not subservient. "Captain, I understand you're following orders, but I ask that you allow me to retrieve the documentation that will clear up this misunderstanding. The papers are in my quarters above the barn. You'll retrieve nothing without supervision," Morrison replied. "Corporal Jenkins will accompany you to collect any relevant documents." As Elias walked toward the barn with the young soldier, Catherine noticed Samuel and Mary peering through the kitchen window, their faces white with fear and confusion. She wanted to go to them to explain what was happening, but she couldn't bring herself to leave the yard while Elias's freedom hung in the balance. "Captain Morrison," she said, trying to keep her voice level and reasonable, "I've known Mr. Thorne for months now. He's been nothing but honest and reliable. Surely a man's character should count for something in situations like this." "Character doesn't erase military crimes, ma'am," Morrison replied stiffly. "Desertion is a serious offense, particularly during wartime, but the war's been over for years now, even if he had deserted, which he didn't. Surely the passage of time and his exemplary behavior since then should be considered." Morrison's expression softened slightly, and for a moment Catherine thought she might be reaching him. "Ma'am, I understand your concern for someone you've come to trust, but orders are orders, and I have a duty to carry them out regardless of personal considerations." Elias returned from the barn with Corporal Jenkins carrying the worn leather satchel that had been his constant companion since his arrival. Catherine watched anxiously as he withdrew Charlie's letter and what appeared to be official military documents. "This is the letter my brother wrote before his death," Elias said, handing the papers to Captain Morrison. "It documents my approved leave for family medical emergency, and this is my official discharge signed by Colonel Matthews and witnessed by the post chaplain Morrison. Examine the documents with professional thoroughness." his expression growing increasingly troubled as he read. The silence stretched painfully as he compared the papers to something in his own file. "These documents appear to be authentic," he said finally, "but they contradict the information in my orders. Then perhaps your orders are based on outdated or incorrect information," Catherine suggested hopefully. "That's possible." Morrison admitted reluctantly, "Military bureaucracy isn't always as efficient as we'd like. Records get lost. Corrections don't reach all the relevant parties." Catherine felt a surge of relief, but it was premature. Morrison folded the documents and handed them back to Elias, his expression regaining its official coldness. However, he continued regardless of what these papers say. "I have explicit orders to bring you in for questioning. The conflicting documentation will have to be sorted out by the proper authorities. You're arresting him, despite evidence that proves his innocence?" Catherine asked incredulously. "I'm following my orders, ma'am. If there's been an error, it will be corrected through proper channels." Elias placed a gentle hand on Catherine's arm as she started to protest further. "It's all right," he said quietly. "Let them do their job. The truth will come out." "But this is insane," Catherine said, tears of frustration burning her eyes. "You have proof that you did nothing wrong. How can they just ignore it?" "Because that's how the military works," Elias replied with resignation. Spoke of long experience with institutional inflexibility. Evidence has to be processed through official channels reviewed by the proper authorities. "It doesn't matter what I have in my possession if it's not in their files." Captain Morrison stepped forward with a pair of shackles, and Catherine felt her heart break at the sight. "Is that really necessary?" she asked. "He's not resisting arrest. He's not trying to flee. Surely you can see that he's cooperating fully." "Regulations require restraints for the transport of military prisoners," Morrison replied. But his tone suggested he took no pleasure in the requirement. As the cold metal closed around Elias's wrists, Catherine felt something fierce and protective rise up in her chest. This man had become part of her family, had earned the love and trust of her children, had proven himself through countless acts of kindness and reliability. Watching him being treated like a common criminal was unbearable. "Where are you taking him?" she demanded Fort Collins for preliminary questioning, then probably Denver for a formal review. Morrison replied the process could take several weeks, possibly months, if the paperwork is as complicated as it appears to be. Several weeks, possibly months. Catherine thought of the harvest that needed to be completed, of Samuel and Mary's devastation at losing the man they'd come to see as a father figure, of her own growing feelings that she'd barely had time to acknowledge, much less explore. "Can I visit him?" she asked. "Ma'am, that would be up to the commanding officer at Fort Collins. I can't make any promises," as they prepared to lead Elias away. He turned back to Catherine with an expression that combined regret, gratitude, and something deeper that made her chest tighten with emotion. "Take care of the children," he said quietly. "Tell them I didn't want to leave, that this isn't their fault. You'll tell them yourself when you come back," Catherine said, fiercely, refusing to accept that this might be permanent. "Catherine, no," she interrupted. "You'll come back. We'll figure this out. We'll prove your innocence, and you'll come home." Something shifted in Elias's expression at her use of the word home, a recognition of what they'd built together, what was at stake in this moment. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything, for trusting me, for letting me be part of your family, for giving me a place to belong. This is still your place," Catherine said, her voice breaking slightly. "It always will be," as the soldiers led Elias toward their horses. Catherine called after Captain Morrison one more time. "Captain, please look at him, really look at him. Does he seem like a man who would abandon his duty? Does he seem like someone who would run from responsibility?" Morrison paused, and for a moment his professional mask slipped enough to reveal the man beneath, someone who'd probably seen too many good men destroyed by bureaucratic mistakes and institutional indifference. "No, ma'am," he said quietly. "He doesn't, but that doesn't change my orders." Catherine watched helplessly as they rode away, Elias's tall figure rigid with dignity. Despite the shackles and the circumstances, only when they disappeared over the hill did she allow herself to sink onto the porch steps, the full weight of what had just happened crashing over her. Samuel and Mary emerged from the house cautiously, their faces stricken with confusion and fear. "Mama, why did those soldiers take Mr. Eli?" Mary asked, her voice small and scared. Catherine gathered her children close, struggling to find words that would explain the inexplicable. "There's been a mistake," she said finally. "The army thinks Mr. Eli did something wrong a long time ago. But he didn't. We're going to prove that and bring him home." When Samuel asked, with the directness he'd inherited from his father, "I don't know," Catherine admitted, "but we won't give up. Mr. Eli is part of our family now, and families don't abandon each other," as she held her children and looked out over the farm that had been transformed by Elias's presence. Catherine felt something crystallize in her chest, her determination, stronger than any she'd ever experienced. She would not let bureaucratic incompetence destroy the life they'd built together. She would not let fear or convention or other people's expectations drive away the man who'd brought joy back to her children and hope back to her heart. Whatever it took, however long it required, she would bring Elias home. The harvest could wait. The farm could manage a few more days without attention. Right now, Catherine Bell had more important work to do, the work of fighting for the man she was only now beginning to realize she loved 3 days after Elias's arrest. Catherine stood in the dusty main street of Dust Valley, her father's old hunting rifle slung across her shoulder and determination blazing in her eyes. She had never thought she would need the weapon that had hung forgotten in the attic for years, but desperation had driven her to retrieve it, as both protection and symbol of her resolve. The decision to fight had crystallized during a sleepless night of pacing the farmhouse floors, listening to Mary cry herself to sleep, and watching Samuel sit silent and hollow-eyed at the kitchen table. Her children needed Elias, and more importantly, Elias needed someone to stand up for him against a system that seemed determined to destroy good men through bureaucratic indifference. She had spent the morning in town speaking with anyone who would listen about Elias's character and the injustice of his arrest. The responses had been mixed, some sympathetic but helpless, others suspicious of her defense of a man they barely knew. But Henrik Larsson's reaction had been the most troubling. "Perhaps this is for the best," Catherine he'd said when she encountered him outside the general store. "Now, you can see what happens when you trust strangers instead of relying on people who truly care about you." The callousness of his response had ignited something fierce in Catherine's chest. "This is not for the best," she'd snapped. "This is an innocent man being punished for bureaucratic incompetence, and I won't stand by and watch it happen." "Catherine, be reasonable," Henrik had pleaded. "You barely know this man. He could be lying about everything, the discharge papers, his brother's death, all of it. Maybe the army knows something about him that you don't." "I know everything I need to know," Catherine had replied firmly. "I know his character, I know his heart, and I know that he deserves better than this." Now standing outside the telegraph office with the afternoon sun beating down on her shoulders, Catherine prepared to take the first concrete step in her campaign to free Elias. She had composed a carefully worded message to the War Department in Washington, explaining the situation and requesting immediate review of Sergeant Thorne's case. The telegraph operator, a nervous man named Otis, who'd held the job for 20 years, looked skeptical as he read her message. "Mrs. Bell, you sure you want to send this? It's going to cost you $3, and there's no guarantee anyone in Washington will even read it." "Send it," Catherine said, placing the money on the counter with decisive finality, as Otis tapped out her message on the telegraph key. Catherine felt the weight of the rifle across her shoulders and the gravity of what she was undertaking. She was one woman challenging a military bureaucracy that had crushed countless individuals without a second thought. The odds were stacked impossibly against her, but she refused to be intimidated. The bell above the door chimed as someone entered behind her, and Catherine turned to see Dr. Hartwell, the town's elderly physician. He was a kind man who'd attended both Samuel and Mary's births, and his expression showed genuine concern as he approached her. "Catherine, I heard about what happened to Mr. Thorne," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. He seemed like a good man?" He is a good man, Catherine corrected firmly, and this isn't over. Dr. Hartwell's weathered face creased with worry. My dear, I understand your feelings, but fighting the army is dangerous business. These men have power and resources. You can't imagine you could end up making things worse for everyone involved. Things are already as bad as they can get. Catherine replied. Elias is sitting in a military prison for crimes he didn't commit. My children are heartbroken, and the best man I've known since my husband died is being destroyed by bureaucratic incompetence. How exactly could I make things worse by drawing official attention to yourself and your family? Doctor, Hartwell said gently, by making enemies of people who could cause you real harm. Catherine, you have children to think about. I am thinking about my children. Catherine said, her voice rising with passion. I'm thinking about the man who carved Samuel a wooden horse and taught him what it means to be honorable. I'm thinking about the man who spent hours listening to Mary practice reading, who made her feel safe during thunderstorms. I'm thinking about the man who risked his life to save our animals during that terrible storm. Other people in the telegraph office had turned to listen, drawn by the intensity of her words. Catherine realized she was making a public declaration, but she found she didn't care if people were going to judge her for fighting for what was right then, so be it. Most of all, she continued, her voice carrying clearly through the small space. I'm thinking about the example I want to set for my children. Do I want them to learn that when someone you love is in trouble, you abandon them to avoid complications, or do I want them to learn that sometimes fighting for what's right is more important than staying safe? Dr. Hartwell nodded slowly, understanding flickering in his eyes. You love him. The simple statement hit Catherine like a revelation. She had been so focused on justice, on fairness, on the principle of the thing, that she hadn't fully acknowledged the deeper truth driving her actions. Yes, she said quietly, the admission feeling both terrifying and liberating. I love him. The telegraph finished transmitting, and Otis looked up from his equipment message sent Mrs. Bell. You should have a response within a few days if anyone in Washington decides to answer. Catherine nodded and turned to leave, but Dr. Hartwell caught her arm. Gently. Catherine, if you're determined to pursue this, you're going to need help. Official help. Have you considered contacting a lawyer? With what money? Catherine asked bitterly. I'm a widow farmer, doctor. I don't have the resources to hire fancy lawyers to fight the United States Army. Maybe you don't need a fancy lawyer, Dr. Hartwell mused. Maybe you just need someone who understands military law and has connections in the right places. Something in his tone made Catherine look at him more closely. Do you know someone like that? I might, Dr. Hartwell said carefully. During the war, I served as a field surgeon with the Army of the Potomac. There was a young lieutenant in my unit. Brilliant man, studied law before the war. He left the military after Appomattox to practice in Denver, specializing in cases involving military injustice. Catherine felt her first real surge of hope since Elias's arrest. Would he help us? I don't know, Dr. Hartwell admitted, but I could write to him, explain the situation. James Patterson, that's his name, and never could stand seeing good men destroyed by military stupidity. Please, Catherine said, grasping the doctor's hand. Please write to him today. I will, Dr. Hartwell promised. But Catherine, even with legal help, this is going to be a long fight. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared for the possibility that despite all your efforts, you might not be able to save him? Catherine thought of Elias's gentle hands teaching Samuel to whittle, of his patience with Mary's endless questions, of the quiet conversations they'd shared on the porch, while the stars emerged overhead. She thought of the way he'd made her feel safe without making her feel weak, supported without feeling diminished. I'm prepared to fight for as long as it takes, she said firmly, and I'm prepared to live with the consequences of that choice. Over the next week, Catherine threw herself into the campaign to free Elias with single-minded determination. She wrote letters to every government official she could think of, from territorial representatives to senators in Washington. She organized a petition among the townspeople, gathering signatures from everyone who had witnessed Elias's character during his time in Dust Valley. The responses were mixed. Some people signed, readily moved by Catherine's passion and their own observations of Elias's behavior. Others were more cautious, Unwilling to challenge military authority or concerned about associating themselves with a potential deserter, Henrik Larsson's reaction was predictably negative. "Catherine, you're making a spectacle of yourself," he said when she approached him outside the bank. "People are starting to talk, and not kindly. You're a respectable widow, not some camp follower chasing after soldiers." The crude characterization of her efforts made Catherine's temper flare. "I'm fighting for justice." "Henrik, if that makes people uncomfortable, perhaps they need to examine their own consciences." "Justice?" Henrik scoffed. "You're fighting for a man you've known for a few months, risking your reputation and your children's future for someone who might be lying about everything." "Elias isn't lying," Catherine said firmly. "I've seen his character demonstrated in dozens of ways. I trust him completely, more than you trust the people who've known you for years." Henrik's voice carried hurt as well as anger. "More than you trust me." Catherine looked at Henrik, really looked at him, and saw not just wounded pride, but genuine confusion. He couldn't understand how she could choose an outsider over the established relationships and expectations of their community. "Henrik, this isn't about choosing between people," she said more gently. "This is about doing what's right, regardless of what other people expect or approve of. And what if you're wrong?" Henrik asked. "What if this man isn't who you think he is? What if you're destroying your life for someone who doesn't deserve it? Then I'll live with the consequences," Catherine replied. "But I won't live with the consequences of abandoning someone I love when he needs me most." The word love hung in the air between them, and Catherine saw Henrik's face change as he finally understood the depth of her feelings. The realization seemed to drain the fight out of him, leaving only sadness. "I see," he said quietly. "Then there's nothing more to say." As Henrik walked away, Catherine felt a pang of regret for the hurt she'd caused him. He was a good man who deserved better than to be rejected for someone she could barely admit loving. But she couldn't force feelings that weren't there, couldn't choose security over passion, couldn't settle for kindness when her heart yearned for something deeper. The breakthrough came on a Thursday morning, exactly 10 days after Elias's arrest. Catherine was feeding the chickens when Samuel came running from the house, a telegram clutched in his small fist. "Mama, Mama," a message from the telegraph office. Catherine's hands shook as she opened the yellow paper, afraid to hope, but unable to stop herself. The message was from James Patterson, the Denver lawyer. Dr. Hartwell had contacted Mrs. Bell. "Stop reviewed Thorn case files. Stop clear evidence of bureaucratic error. Stop arriving Dust Valley Friday to discuss strategy. Stop, have hope, stop." Patterson. Catherine read the telegram 3 times before the words fully registered. Help was coming. Professional help from someone who understood military law and had the connections to fight the system that had trapped Elias. "What does it say?" Mama Samuel asked, his young face tight with anxiety. "It says we're going to bring Mr. Eli home," Catherine replied, gathering her son into a fierce hug. That evening, after the children were in bed, Catherine sat at the kitchen table, writing by lamplight. She had decided to send a letter to Elias at Fort Collins, hoping it would reach him and provide some comfort during his imprisonment. The words came slowly, each sentence carefully chosen to convey her feelings without saying too much. "Dear Elias," she wrote the children, "and I miss you terribly. Samuel asks about you every day, and Mary has been saving wildflowers to give you when you come home. I want you to know that we haven't given up on you. Help is coming, and we're going to prove your innocence." She paused, her pen hovering over the paper as she struggled with how much to reveal. Finally, she decided that honesty was more important than propriety. "I also want you to know that these past days have made me realize something important. You're not just our hired hand or even our friend, you're part of our family now. The thought of losing you has shown me how much you mean to all of us, how much you mean to me. Please don't give up hope. We're fighting for you, and we won't stop until you're home where you belong." She signed the letter simply Catherine and sealed it with wax. Knowing it might be weeks before Elias received it, but needing to send some message of hope into the darkness of his confinement. Friday arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if the weather itself was cooperating with Catherine's renewed optimism. She had spent the morning cleaning the house and preparing a guest room for Mr. Patterson, treating his visit with the importance it deserved. James Patterson arrived on the afternoon stage, and Catherine was surprised by his appearance. She had expected an older man, someone with gray hair and decades of experience. Instead, Patterson appeared to be in his early 30s with intelligent eyes and the kind of precise movements that spoke of military training never quite forgotten Mrs. Bell, he said, removing his hat as he approached her on the porch. I'm James Patterson, Doctor. Hartwell wrote to me about your situation. Thank you for coming, Catherine replied, gesturing toward the chairs where she and Elias had spent so many peaceful evenings. I hope you can help us. Patterson settled into his chair and withdrew a leather portfolio from his traveling bag. I've spent the past week researching Sergeant Thorne's case, and I have both good news and bad news. Catherine's heart clenched, but she forced herself to remain calm. The bad news first. Please. The bad news is that this case involves more than simple bureaucratic error. Someone in the military hierarchy has been actively suppressing evidence of Sergeant Thorne's innocence, apparently to cover up their own mistakes in the original investigation. Someone's been deliberately keeping him from being cleared, Catherine asked. Horrified, it appears so. The good news is that I've found the source of the problem, and I believe I can prove not only Sergeant Thorne's innocence, but also the misconduct of the officers who've been covering up the truth. Patterson opened his portfolio and withdrew several official-looking documents. The officer who originally filed the desertion charges was a Captain Bradley Walsh, who was later court-martialed for theft and conduct, unbecoming an officer. Before his disgrace, Walsh apparently falsified several desertion cases to cover up his own failures as a commanding officer. Catherine felt a surge of hope mixed with outrage. You mean Elias was framed, in essence? Yes, Walsh needed scapegoats to explain the high casualty rates in his unit, so he posthumously charged several soldiers with desertion who had actually died in battle or been granted legitimate leave. Unfortunately, Walsh destroyed much of the evidence before his own court-martial, and the Army has been reluctant to reopen cases that might expose the extent of his corruption. But you can prove Elias's innocence? I believe so. Patterson said, his expression growing more confident. I found 3 independent sources that confirm Sergeant Thorne's compassionate leave was properly authorized. More importantly, I've discovered that Captain Walsh was not even Sergeant Thorne's commanding officer at the time of the alleged desertion. He falsified those records after the fact. Catherine felt tears of relief beginning to form. How long will it take to get him released? That's where things get complicated, Patterson admitted. Proving his innocence is one thing. Getting the military to admit their mistake and release him promptly is another. We're dealing with institutional pride and the natural reluctance of any organization to acknowledge serious errors. What do we need to do? Patterson leaned forward, his expression serious. We need to create enough public pressure that the Army finds it more embarrassing to keep an innocent man imprisoned than to admit their mistake. That means publicity, political pressure, and demonstrating that Sergeant Thorne has strong community support. Catherine thought about the mixed reactions she'd received in town, the reluctance of some people to get involved, the whispers about her reputation and judgment. I'm not sure how much community support we can count on, she said honestly. Some people have been sympathetic, but others are suspicious of Elias or concerned about challenging military authority. What about you? Patterson asked. Are you prepared to become the public face of this campaign? It will mean newspaper interviews, public appearances, possibly even testimony before military tribunals. Your personal life will be scrutinized, your motivations questioned. Catherine thought of Samuel and Mary, of the life they'd built on the farm, of the quiet peace that would be shattered by the kind of public attention Patterson was describing. Then she thought of Elias, sitting in a military prison, facing the possibility of years of imprisonment for crimes he hadn't committed. Yes, she said firmly, whatever it takes. There's something else you should know, Patterson continued, his voice gentler now. This kind of campaign will make your relationship with Sergeant Thorne very public. People will speculate about the nature of your feelings for him, about what happens if we succeed in freeing him. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny? Catherine felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she met Patterson's gaze steadily. My feelings for Elias aren't something I'm ashamed of. If people want to judge me for caring about a good man, that says more about them than it does about me. Patterson smiled for the first time since his arrival. Excellent, that's exactly the attitude we'll need to succeed over the next hour. They developed a comprehensive strategy. Patterson would file formal appeals with the military justice system, while simultaneously contacting newspaper editors and political figures who might be sympathetic to their cause. Catherine would organize local support, gathering testimonials about Elias's character and creating a petition demanding his immediate release. There's one more thing, Patterson said as their meeting concluded. I'm going to need you to travel to Denver with me next week. There's a territorial judge there who's been critical of military overreach, and he's agreed to review the case informally. Your testimony about Sergeant Thorne's character could be crucial in convincing him to intervene. Catherine's mind immediately went to her children, to the farm that couldn't be left unattended, to all the practical obstacles that stood in the way of such a trip. I understand, it's difficult, Patterson said, reading her expression, but Mrs. Bell, your personal testimonials, the woman who knows Sergeant Thorne best, who can speak to his character and the impact of his imprisonment, could be the difference between success and failure. Catherine looked out across the farm that Elias had helped transform, at the golden wheat fields that awaited harvest, at the peaceful scene that had become her definition of home. Somewhere to the north, the man who'd made all of this possible was sitting in a prison cell, trusting her to fight for his freedom. I'll find a way, she said. Whatever it takes, I'll be there that night. After Patterson had retired to the guest room and the children were asleep, Catherine stood on the porch holding her father's hunting rifle. She had retrieved it from the attic as a symbol of her determination to fight. But now it felt like something more, a tangible reminder that some battles were worth the risk of everything you held dear. She thought about the journey ahead, the public scrutiny she would face, the possibility that despite all their efforts, they might still fail to free Elias. The odds remained daunting. The obstacles significant, the potential for heartbreak enormous. But as she looked up at the stars that had witnessed so many of her conversations with Elias, Catherine felt a deep certainty settle in her chest. Love wasn't just about the easy moments, the peaceful evenings, the gradual building of trust and affection. Love was also about standing up when the world tried to knock down someone you cared about risking everything to protect what mattered most. Tomorrow, she would begin the most important fight of her life. Tonight, she would hold on to hope and prepare for battle. The Denver courthouse was an imposing brick building that seemed designed to intimidate ordinary citizens who dared to challenge official authority. Catherine stood on its front steps with James Patterson at her side, clutching a small satchel that contained what she hoped would be the key to Elias's freedom. The morning air was crisp with the promise of winter, but sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool temperature. Remember, Patterson said quietly, Judge Morisono, relation to the captain who arrested Sergeant Thorne, is known for his fairness, but he's also a stickler for proper procedure. We need to present our evidence clearly and let him draw his own conclusions. Catherine nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. She had never testified in any legal proceeding, had never been inside a courthouse except for the recording of Thomas's death certificate. The formal environment felt alien and hostile, a place where ordinary people's concerns were translated into legal language that stripped away emotion and humanity. What if I say the wrong thing, she asked. What if I make things worse for Elias? You won't, Patterson assured her. Just tell the truth about what you've observed about the man you know. Your sincerity will be more powerful than any legal argument I could make. They entered the courthouse and were directed to Judge Morrison's chambers, a wood-paneled room lined with law books and dominated by an enormous desk. The judge himself was a distinguished man in his 50s with graying hair and the kind of penetrating gaze that suggested he'd heard every possible variation of legal excuse and deception. Mr. Patterson, Judge Morrison said, rising to shake hands. I've read your preliminary brief, and I must say this case presents some disturbing implications about military justice procedures. Thank you for agreeing to review it. Your Honor, Patterson replied, I'd like you to meet Mrs. Catherine Bell, who can provide crucial testimony about Sergeant Thorne's character and conduct. Judge Morrison turned his attention to Catherine, and she felt the weight of his scrutiny as, Bell, I understand you've become personally involved in this case. Can you tell me how you came to know Sergeant Thorne? Catherine took a deep breath and began to tell her story. Elias's arrival at her farm, his request for work in exchange for room and board, the gradual development of trust and respect between them. She spoke about his skills with animals, his gentleness with her children, his willingness to work without wages or guarantees. Did he ever discuss his military service with you? Judge Morrison asked. Only briefly, and only when I asked directly, Catherine replied. He mentioned serving in the Union Army, and he spoke about losing his brother, but he wasn't boastful about his service or bitter about his experiences. He seemed like a man who'd seen difficult things and was trying to build a peaceful life. Judge Morrison made notes as she spoke occasionally, asking for clarification about dates or details. When Catherine finished her account, he leaned back in his chair with a thoughtful expression. Mr. Patterson, you've made serious allegations about corruption in the military justice system. Can you substantiate these claims? Patterson opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. Your Honor, I've spent 3 weeks researching Captain Bradley Walsh's service record and the cases he handled during his final months as an active officer. The pattern of falsification is clear and extensive. As Patterson presented his evidence, Catherine watched Judge Morrison's expression grow increasingly grave. Documents showed that Walsh had filed desertion charges against at least 8 soldiers who could be proven to have been elsewhere at the time of their alleged crimes. Some had been on authorized leave. Others had been in military hospitals, and 2 had actually died in battle weeks before their supposed desertions. This is damning evidence, Judge Morrison said when Patterson finished his presentation. But why hasn't the military itself discovered these discrepancies? Because acknowledging them would mean admitting that dozens of men were wrongly punished based on false charges, Patterson replied. The institutional embarrassment would be enormous, and the financial implications, back pay pensions, reparations to families would be significant. Judge Morrison turned back to Catherine. Mrs. Bell, given what you've heard here today, are you still confident in your assessment of Sergeant Thorne's character? Catherine thought about the question carefully. She had come here believing in Elias's innocence based on her knowledge of his character. But now she had documentary evidence that supported her faith in him. More confident than ever, Your Honor, she said firmly. Everything I've learned today confirms what I already knew, that Elias Thorne is an honorable man who's been wronged by a system that should have protected him. And what is your relationship with Sergeant Thorne? Judge Morrison asked, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. Catherine felt her cheeks warm, knowing this was the question that would determine how seriously her testimony was taken. If she appeared to be simply a lovesick woman defending her paramour, her credibility would be destroyed. Sergeant Thorne became part of our family, she said carefully. My children adore him, and I've come to respect and care for him deeply. But my testimony today isn't based on emotional attachment. It's based on months of observing his actions, his integrity, his commitment to doing what's right. Judge Morrison studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Patterson, what specific relief are you seeking? Immediate release of Sergeant Thorne from military custody, expungement of all charges from his record, and formal acknowledgement that he was wrongly imprisoned, Patterson replied. We're also requesting that the military investigate the broader pattern of corruption that led to this injustice. That's a significant request, Judge Morrison observed. While I'm disturbed by the evidence you've presented, I have limited authority to intervene in military proceedings. Catherine felt her heart sink. Had they come all this way, only to be told that civilian courts couldn't help them? However, Judge Morrison continued, I do have some influence with certain officials in Washington, and I can make informal inquiries that might expedite a resolution. More importantly, I can provide a written opinion that documents the evidence of Sergeant Thorne's innocence, which could be useful in higher-level appeals. It wasn't the immediate victory Catherine had hoped for, but it was progress. Judge Morrison spent the next hour drafting a detailed opinion that summarized the evidence and concluded that Sergeant Thorne had been grievously wronged by a system that failed in its duty to seek truth and administer justice fairly. As they left the courthouse, Catherine felt both relieved and frustrated. They had achieved what they'd come to accomplish, but Elias was still imprisoned, still facing an uncertain future. "How long before we know if this makes a difference?" she asked Patterson as they walked toward their hotel. "It's hard to say." Patterson admitted Judge Morrison's opinion carries weight, but the military moves slowly. "We could hear something in days, or it could take months." Catherine thought about Samuel and Mary back home, about the harvest that needed to be completed, about all the practical concerns that couldn't wait for military bureaucracy to correct its mistakes. "There has to be something else we can do," she said, "some way to force them to act more quickly." Patterson stopped walking and turned to face her. "There is one option, but it's risky and would require you to take an even more public role in this fight." "What kind of role?" "There's a reporter for the Denver Post who's been investigating military corruption cases. If we give him this story, complete with your personal testimony and Judge Morrison's opinion, it could create enough public pressure to force the Army's hand." Catherine considered the implications. A newspaper story would mean even more scrutiny of her personal life, more speculation about her relationship with Elias, more judgment from people who didn't understand the situation. Would it help Elias? She asked. It might. Public embarrassment is sometimes the only thing that motivates institutional change. Catherine thought of Elias sitting in his cell, not knowing whether anyone was fighting for him or if he'd been forgotten. She thought of her children asking every day when he would come home of the empty chair at their dinner table, of all the conversations they should be having on the porch while the stars emerged overhead. "Set up the interview," she said, "whatever it takes to bring him home." The meeting with the reporter took place that afternoon in the hotel dining room. Thomas Garrett was a thin, intense man in his 40s who took meticulous notes as Catherine told her story once again. This time, however, she found herself speaking not just about facts, but about feelings, about what Elias meant to her family, about the injustice of his imprisonment, about her determination to see him freed. "Mrs. Bell," Garrett said when she finished, "you've painted a compelling picture of personal injustice, but my readers will want to understand your motivation. What drives you to risk so much for a man you've known for only a few months?" It was the question Catherine had been dreading, the one that would expose her deepest feelings to public scrutiny. She looked at Patterson, who nodded encouragingly, then made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. "Love," she said simply. "I love him. I love the man. He is the father figure he's become to my children, the partner he's been in building a life together. And when you love someone, you don't abandon them when times get difficult." Garrett scribbled rapidly, clearly recognizing the human interest angle that would make his story compelling to readers. "Are you planning to marry Sergeant Thorne if he's freed?" Garrett asked. Catherine felt her face flush, but she met his gaze steadily. "If he'll have me." "Yes, but first we have to get him out of prison and clear his name." The next morning's Denver Post carried a front-page story with the headline, "Widow Fights Army to Free Innocent Man." Catherine's photograph appeared alongside the article, and Garrett had crafted a narrative that combined legal injustice with human drama in a way that made Elias's case impossible to ignore. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By noon, Patterson had received telegrams from 3 different members of Congress asking for more information. The territorial governor's office called to request copies of Judge Morrison's opinion. Most importantly, a colonel from the Judge Advocate General's office in Washington sent word that he was personally reviewing Sergeant Thorne's case and expected to have a decision within 48 hours. "It's working," Patterson told Catherine as they read through the flood of responses. "The publicity is forcing them to act." But Catherine felt no sense of triumph, only an exhausting mixture of hope and anxiety. They had unleashed forces beyond their control, and the consequences, for better or worse, would determine not just Elias's fate, but the future of her family. That evening, as she sat alone in her hotel room, Catherine opened the small Bible she'd brought from home and turned to the passage Thomas had always quoted during difficult times. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. She wasn't sure she believed that everything would work out for the best, but she believed in the power of love to sustain people through impossible circumstances. Whatever happened in the next few days, she had fought with everything she had to protect the man who'd become the center of her world. Now all she could do was wait and pray that it would be enough. The telegram arrived at dawn on Thursday morning, delivered by a breathless messenger who'd ridden through the night from Denver. Catherine's hands shook as she read the words that would change everything Sergeant Elias Thorne ordered. Released immediately. Stop all charges. Dismissed with prejudice. Stop formal apology from War Department forthcoming. Stop congratulations, Mrs. Bell. Stop your courage. Made this possible. Stop Patterson. Catherine sank into the kitchen chair where she'd spent so many anxious hours over the past 3 weeks, tears of relief streaming down her face. Samuel and Mary, awakened by the messenger's arrival, clustered around her with sleepy confusion. "What does it say?" Mama Samuel asked, trying to read over her shoulder. "It says, Mr. Eli is coming home." Catherine managed through her tears. "The army is letting him go. He's free." Mary threw her small arms around Catherine's neck with a squeal of joy, while Samuel grinned with relief that made him look like a little boy again, instead of the serious 8-year-old who'd been carrying adult worries for weeks. "When will he be here?" Mary demanded. "Can we make him a cake? Can we pick flowers for his room?" Catherine laughed through her tears, overwhelmed by the sudden shift from despair to joy. "I don't know exactly when, sweetheart, but soon, very soon." The next few days passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Word of Elias's impending release spread through Dust Valley like wildfire, generating reactions that ranged from genuine celebration to uncomfortable acknowledgement that their judgments had been wrong. Dr. Hartwell stopped by to offer his congratulations and assistance with anything the family might need. "I'm proud of you, Catherine," he said. "Not many people would have had the courage to take on the United States Army." "I wasn't brave," Catherine replied. "I was just desperate. When someone you love is in trouble, you do whatever it takes to help them." Henrik Larsson's visit was more awkward, tinged with the recognition that his harsh words during Elias's imprisonment had revealed something ugly about his character. "Catherine, I owe you an apology," he said stiffly, standing on her porch with his hat in his hands. "I was wrong about Mr. Thorne, and I was wrong to suggest you should abandon him. You were trying to protect me the way you thought best." Catherine replied graciously, though she couldn't forget his callousness during her darkest hours. "I understand that. Still, I hope you can forgive me, and I hope you'll both be very happy." The simple words, delivered with obvious difficulty, touched Catherine more than elaborate apologies would have. Henrik was a proud man, and admitting error didn't come easily to him. "Thank you, Henrik," she said warmly. "That means a great deal to me." On Saturday afternoon, exactly 4 weeks after Elias's arrest, Catherine was hanging laundry when she saw a familiar figure walking up the road from town. Her heart stopped as she recognized the tall frame, the steady gait that favored his left leg. Slightly the patient way he carried himself even when eager to reach his destination. "Samuel, Mary," she called, her voice cracking with emotion. "Come quickly!" The children tumbled out of the house and froze when they saw the approaching figure. Then Mary screamed with joy and ran toward Elias as fast as her 6-year-old legs could carry her. Samuel followed more slowly, but his face was radiant with happiness. Catherine watched from the clothesline as Elias knelt to receive Mary's enthusiastic embrace as he ruffled Samuel's hair. and listened to the boys' excited chatter about everything that had happened during his absence. The scene was so perfectly right, so exactly what she'd dreamed about during the long weeks of his imprisonment, that she felt tears threatening again. When Elias finally approached her, still flanked by the chattering children, Catherine felt suddenly shy. They had confessed their feelings in letters and public declarations, but they hadn't had time to explore what those feelings meant in practical terms. "Catherine," Elias said simply, his voice carrying all the emotion he couldn't express in front of the children. "Welcome home," she replied. And the word home carried weight and promise, and the acknowledgement that this was where he belonged. That evening, after the children were finally convinced to go to bed, and Elias had reclaimed his room above the barn, Catherine found him on the front porch, in his familiar spot. The autumn air was crisp with the promise of winter, but the stars overhead were the same ones that had witnessed their growing friendship and gradual recognition of deeper feelings. "Tell me everything," Catherine said, settling into her own chair with a sense of rightness that came from having the world properly arranged again. "There's not much to tell about the imprisonment itself," Elias replied. "Military jails are designed to be forgettable, but, Catherine, what you did fighting for me, the way you did, I still can't quite believe it." "What else could I do?" Catherine asked. "You're part of our family. You don't abandon family. Some people would have," Elias said quietly. "Some people would have decided it was too much trouble, too much risk to their reputation." Catherine thought about Henrik's words about the townspeople who'd questioned her judgment about all the practical reasons she could have chosen to let the military handle the situation without interference. "Those people have never loved someone the way I love you," she said simply. The words hung in the air between them, more direct than anything she'd said before. Elias turned to look at her, his expression serious in the starlight. "Catherine, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She nodded, though her heart began to race with sudden anxiety. "Is this real?" Elias asked. "What's between you? Is it real, or is it gratitude and relief and the intensity of fighting together for something important? Because I love you more than I've ever loved anyone, but I need to know if what you feel is love, or just—" Catherine rose from her chair and moved to sit on the porch railing directly in front of him, close enough to see the vulnerability in his eyes. "Elias Thorne," she said firmly, "I fell in love with you months before you were arrested. I fell in love with the way you gentled the horses, the way you listened to my children's chatter, the way you made me feel strong instead of making me feel weak. The fight to free you didn't create my feelings. It just forced me to acknowledge them." Something shifted in Elias's expression, a relaxation of tension he'd been carrying since his return. "Thank you," he said simply. "I needed to hear that. Now I have a question for you." Catherine said, "What happens next? We've both admitted we love each other, but we haven't talked about what that means." Practically, Elias was quiet for a moment, looking out over the farm that had become his home. "What I want," he said finally, "is to marry you if you'll have me. Not because you need protection or because the children need a father, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Catherine felt her heart soar at the simple declaration. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you. There's something else," Elias continued. "The War Department has offered me a significant settlement, back pay damages for wrongful imprisonment, compensation for the years I spent thinking I was a fugitive. It's enough money to make real improvements to the farm, to secure the children's futures, to build the life Thomas dreamed about." Catherine stared at him in amazement. "That's wonderful. Elias, you deserve compensation for what they put you through. I want to put it all into the farm," Elias said, "into our farm, our future. But I need you to know that I'm not marrying you for the land or the ready-made family. I'm marrying you because you're the strongest, most remarkable woman I've ever known. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving worthy of your love." Catherine reached out and took his hands, feeling the calluses that spoke of honest work and the strength that had sustained them through impossible circumstances. "You already proved that," she said softly. "You proved it by staying when things got difficult, by caring for my children as if they were your own, by accepting my love without trying to diminish my strength. As they sat together in the peaceful darkness, planning their future and marveling at the journey that had brought them to this moment, Catherine felt a deep sense of completion. The love she'd shared with Thomas had been the foundation of her adult life, but it belonged to the past. The love she felt for Elias was built on the woman she'd become through loss and struggle, seasoned by experience, and strengthened by the knowledge that real love meant choosing each other every day. When Elias asked eventually, What? When do you want to get married?" Catherine smiled, thinking of all the practical considerations, the harvest that still needed to be completed, the winter preparations that couldn't wait, the simple desire to be officially united with the man who'd already become her partner in every way that mattered. Soon, she said, very soon. Above them, the stars bore witness to another promise, another beginning, another chance at happily ever after in a world that didn't guarantee such things, but sometimes, for those brave enough to fight for them, made them possible. Anyway, 6 months later, Catherine Bell Thorne stood in the doorway of her kitchen watching her husband teach their son to repair a bridle with patient hands and quiet instruction. The morning sun streamed through windows that sparkled with spring cleaning, illuminating a scene of domestic contentment that still sometimes took her breath away. The wedding had taken place on a crisp November day, with the whole community of Dust Valley gathered to witness their union. Even Henrik Larsson had attended, bringing a handcrafted hope chest as a wedding gift and offering genuine congratulations to the couple. Dr. Hartwell had performed the ceremony, his words about love's power to overcome any obstacle bringing tears to many eyes. But it was the moments before the ceremony that Catherine treasured most in her memory. She had walked alone to Thomas's grave, carrying a bouquet of late wildflowers and wearing the simple gold band that had symbolized her first marriage. "I'm not saying goodbye," she'd whispered to the man who'd shaped her understanding of love and commitment. "I'm saying thank you for teaching me that love doesn't diminish when it's shared, that honoring the past doesn't mean abandoning the future." She'd removed Thomas's ring and placed it gently on the headstone, replacing it with the new band Elias had made for her from gold, provided by his military settlement. The gesture felt like completion rather than abandonment, a recognition that both loves were real and valid, and part of the woman she'd become. Now, 6 months into their marriage, Catherine marveled at how naturally they'd settled into partnership. Elias had integrated himself into the farm's operations without trying to take over, deferring to her knowledge of the land while contributing his own expertise in ways that enhanced rather than replaced her authority. The military settlement had indeed transformed their prospects. They'd purchased new equipment, expanded the wheat fields as Thomas had dreamed, and even added a small herd of cattle. More importantly, they'd established trust funds for Samuel and Mary's education, ensuring the children would have opportunities neither Catherine nor Elias had enjoyed. Mama. Mary called from the garden where she was helping plant the year's vegetables. "Look how big the tomato seedlings are getting." At 7, Mary had grown more confident and outgoing under Elias's gentle influence. She still brought him daily bouquets, but now she also helped him with farm tasks and peppered him with questions about everything from astronomy to animal behavior. His patient answers and obvious delight in her curiosity had nurtured an intellectual confidence that would serve her well in years to come. Samuel, now 9, had appointed himself Elias's apprentice in all things related to farming and woodworking. The carved horse Elias had made him before his arrest remained his most treasured possession, but it had been joined by an entire menagerie of wooden animals that Elias crafted during winter evenings by the fire. More importantly, Samuel was learning the quiet strength that came from reliable character and steady work lessons that would shape him into the kind of man his father would have been proud to know. The changes weren't just material. Catherine had noticed how the community's attitude toward their family had evolved over the months since Elias's exoneration. The newspaper coverage of his case had made him something of a local hero, and people who'd once been suspicious of the quiet stranger now greeted him with genuine respect and warmth. But the most significant change was in Catherine herself. For 3 years after Thomas's death, she'd carried the weight of responsibility alone, proud of her independence, but also exhausted by its demands. Now she had a true partner, someone who shared not just the work, but the decision-making, someone whose presence made her stronger rather than making her feel diminished. Catherine Ilias called from the barn. "Could you come look at Belle's left front hoof? I think she might have picked up a stone, but I want your opinion before I try to remove it." The request was typical of their relationship. Ilias recognizing her expertise with the horses while also ensuring that important decisions were made jointly. Catherine wiped her hands on her apron and walked toward the barn, savoring the spring warmth and the sense of purposefulness that marked their days. She found Ilias kneeling beside Belle, the mare's hoof propped on his knee as he examined what appeared to be a small, embedded stone. The horse stood calmly under his touch, completely trusting in his gentle competence. "What do you think?" Ilias asked, pointing to the problem area. Catherine knelt beside him, studying the situation with the careful attention Thomas had taught her years ago. "It's not too deep," she said. "We can work it out with a hoof pick, but we'll need to be careful not to bruise the sole." Working together, they freed the stone and checked for any damage to the sensitive tissue beneath Belle, accepted their ministrations with patient grace, occasionally nuzzling Catherine's shoulder in a gesture of affection that never failed to touch her heart. "She's fine," Catherine concluded, running her hands along the mare's leg to check for heat or swelling. "But we should keep an eye on her for the next few days. Make sure she's not favoring that foot. I'll check her every morning." Ilias agreed, then paused in his examination to look at Catherine with the expression that still made her pulse quicken after months of marriage. "Have I mentioned lately how lucky I am?" "Lucky how?" Catherine asked, though she was smiling at the familiar routine of their mutual appreciation. "Lucky to have found a woman who knows as much about horses as she does about farming, who can outwork most men twice her size, and who's beautiful enough to make me forget what I was doing every time I look at her." Catherine felt herself blush, despite their long intimacy. "Ilias Thorne, you're going to make me forget what I was doing if you keep talking like that." That was the general idea, Ilias replied, pulling her into his arms with the easy affection that characterized their marriage. They were interrupted by Samuel's voice, calling from the house, "Mama, Papa Eli, there's a rider coming up the road." Catherine and Ilias exchanged glances, both remembering the last time unexpected riders had arrived at their farm. But this was a single horseman, and his leisurely pace suggested social rather than official business. They emerged from the barn to see James Patterson dismounting from a well-traveled horse, his familiar smile immediately putting them at ease. The lawyer had become a friend during the months of legal battle, and his visits were always welcome. Catherine called genuine pleasure in her voice. "What brings you to Dust Valley?" "Good news, I hope," Patterson replied, accepting Ilias's firm handshake and Catherine's warm embrace. "I've been in Washington for the past month following up on the investigation into Captain Walsh's corruption." They gathered on the front porch while Mary fetched cool water for their guest, and Samuel settled nearby with obvious curiosity about adult conversations. Patterson accepted the refreshment gratefully before launching into his report. "The War Department's investigation has been even more extensive than we hoped," he began. "They've identified 43 soldiers who were wrongly charged with desertion based on Walsh's falsified reports. All of them have been posthumously exonerated, and their families are receiving full military pensions and benefits." Catherine felt a surge of satisfaction at this news. Ilias's case had been the catalyst for justice that reached far beyond their personal situation. More importantly, Patterson continued, "The Army has implemented new procedures for handling desertion cases, requiring multiple sources of verification before charges can be filed. What you two went through will be much harder for anyone else to experience." "That's wonderful," Catherine said. "But I sense there's more to your visit than just updating us on the investigation." Patterson grinned, the expression of a man bearing particularly good news. "You're right. The War Department has decided to award Elias the Medal of Honor for his service during the war, specifically for the mission where he rescued wounded soldiers under enemy fire. The same mission that led to his unit being scattered and Walsh's subsequent false charges. Catherine gasped, turning to stare at Elias with amazement. He had never mentioned any heroic actions during his military service, had never spoken of his wartime experiences in terms that suggested exceptional valor. "Elias," she said, "you never told me." "Because it didn't seem important," Elias replied. His face flushed with embarrassment. "We were soldiers. We did what soldiers do." "What you did," Patterson corrected, "was save the lives of 6 men while under heavy Confederate fire, then carry 2 of them to safety when they were too wounded to walk. Your commanding officer recommended you for the Medal of Honor at the time, but the paperwork was lost when Walsh destroyed the unit's records." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes as she looked at her husband, this quiet, humble man who had never once boasted about his courage or sought recognition for his sacrifices. The medal was a vindication not just of his innocence, but of the character she'd always seen in him. "The ceremony will be held in Denver next month," Patterson continued. "The territorial governor will present the medal, and there will be significant press coverage. You'll both be invited to attend as honored guests." As they discussed the details of the upcoming ceremony, Catherine found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, she'd been a struggling widow, desperately trying to hold on to her farm and raise her children alone. Now she was married to a war hero. Her family was secure and thriving, and their love story had become part of the public record as an example of faith triumphing over institutional injustice. But more than the external recognition, Catherine treasured the quiet contentment of their daily life, the morning conversations over coffee, the shared glances during meals, the comfortable silences as they worked side by side. These were the real rewards of the battles they'd fought. After Patterson left promising to return for the medal ceremony, Catherine and Elias walked together toward the small cemetery where Thomas rested. It had become their custom to visit the grave together once a week, sometimes bringing the children, sometimes going alone to share the peaceful silence. Today, Catherine carried the first wild flowers of spring purple asters like the one Thomas had pressed in his journal so many years ago. She arranged them carefully at the base of the headstone while Elias stood quietly beside her, offering the respect due to the man whose dreams they were fulfilling. "He would have liked you," Catherine said, as she always did during these visits. "I hope so," Elias replied, as he always did. "I'd like to think he'd approve of how we're caring for what he built." Catherine looked out over the farm that sprawled below them, the golden wheat fields, the sturdy barn, the house where their children played safely in the yard. Everything Thomas had envisioned was coming to pass, but enhanced by Elias's quiet expertise and stabilized by the military settlement that ensured their financial security. "I think he'd be proud," she said, "not just of what we've accomplished, but of how we've honored his memory while building our own future." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold, Catherine and Elias walked hand in hand back toward their home. The children's voices drifted across the evening air, calling them to dinner and the comfortable routines of family life. Standing on the porch where they'd shared so many conversations, where their love had grown from friendship to partnership, to the deep, abiding connection that now defined their lives, Catherine marveled at the unpredictability of happiness. A year ago, she would never have imagined that love could come twice in a lifetime, that trust could be rebuilt after loss, that new dreams could honor old ones while creating entirely new possibilities. "No regrets?" Elias asked, following her gaze across the peaceful scene. "None," Catherine replied without hesitation. "This is exactly where we're supposed to be," as they stood together watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Catherine touched the new wedding rings they both wore, simple bands that symbolized promises made in full knowledge of life's uncertainties, but with complete faith in their ability to face whatever challenges might come. The man who'd appeared at her door with nothing but a willingness to work hard had become her partner, her love, her future. The woman who'd been afraid to trust again had found the courage to open her heart to possibilities she'd thought were lost forever. And the children who'd needed a father had gained not just a provider, but a teacher, a protector, and a source of the quiet strength that would guide them through their own life journeys. In the distance, a nightbird called to its mate, and somewhere in the darkness another voice answered. Catherine smiled at the sound, remembering the first evening she and Elias had sat together on this porch, both of them lonely and uncertain, but drawn together by forces neither fully understood. Now, they understood love wasn't just about grand gestures or passionate declaration. It was about showing up every day, about choosing each other through ordinary moments and extraordinary challenges, about building something lasting from the raw materials of trust and commitment and mutual respect. As they turned to go inside to the warmth of their family and the comfort of their shared life, Catherine felt the deep satisfaction that came from knowing she was exactly where she belonged. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities and promise, and they would face it together, stronger as a team than either had ever been alone. The story that had begun with loss and uncertainty had become one of hope and renewal. Proof that sometimes the best chapters of life were written not in youth, but in the wisdom that came from surviving heartbreak and choosing to love again. Catherine Bell Thorne had found her way home.